struggles and pains. He's the one that broke me free from these chains. He's the one that rose again from the grave. He's the one that conquered sin. He's the one that I praise. He's the one that knows my struggles and pains. He's the one that broke me free from these chains. He's the one that rose again from the grave. He's the one that conquered sin. He's the one that I praise. I know how hard it is. I've hit rock bottom. It's hard to describe. It's like an emptiness inside of us. A life anonymous, caught up in the monotonous. Almost too much. Sometimes you wanna just quit. That's just how bad it gets. When life seems hopeless, it's frozen in moments of time full of such loneliness. Sooner or later, it's too much. It gets the best of us. Some people crack under the pressure and depression. It's just like a test, so do your best. Invest today, always rely on God. Forget to pray, you're bound to fall. Follow the wrong call, and there's no problem solved. It only multiplies them all. Before you stand, you'll crawl. It could be part of God's plan to help you understand. Turn a girl into a woman and a boy to a man. Everyone has a journey, it's uniquely your own. If you need deep in trouble, it might be time to grow. At your lowest spot is when we're closest to God. Sometimes a father, he cannot spare with a rod. We need focused conviction, sometimes correction. When it happens to you, you should deepen your connection. See your reflection for the first time. Look in the mirror, seeking direction through not yours but God's eyes. A humble servant who knows they don't deserve it. It's only by God's grace we cannot earn it. He's the one that knows my struggles and pains. He's the one that broke me free from these chains. He's the one that rose again from the grave. He's the one that conquered sin. He's the one that I praise. He's the one that knows my struggles and pains. He's the one that broke me free from these chains. He's the one that rose again from the grave. He's the one that conquered sin. He's the one that I praise. Our God is glorious. He is victorious. And when we struggle in life, that's when He carries us. He's got the master plan. He has the remedy. He's our Father. We're His children. We're a family. He's watching out for us. He's knocking at your door. If you've been searching, He's been seeking you out even more. He's been right there with you. He is forever true. He is patient. He is loving. And He'll see it through. No matter what you need, trust in Him every day. Even through tragedy and pain, He will provide a way. We have blessed assurance. Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. I fear no evil because He planted a seed that grows inside me. He provides for my needs. He feeds my spirit like the roots of a tree. And all my faults and my weaknesses is where He sees. Through every battle, He's my spiritual shield. Provides the power only that He can yield. Stronger than enemies that try to attack. I overcome them because He watches my back. And now through Him I'm no longer afraid. And on the cross I know my ransom was paid. He sent His only Son to conquer the grave. He took the blame of my sins so that I could be saved. He's the one that knows my struggles and pains. He's the one that broke me free from these chains. He's the one that rose again from the grave. He's the one that conquered sin. He's the one that I praise. He's the one that knows my struggles and pains. He's the one that broke me free from these chains. He's the one that rose again from the grave. He's the one that conquered sin. He's the one that I praise.
Well, hello. You know what, NPC, I bet you're probably here, but before you say anything, I have an announcement that just came through. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice and pioneer of gender equality, pedophilia, dead at 87. It says here the country mourns the death of a feminist icon and prepares for Trump's looming takeover of the High Court. Is it too soon to say bye? I won't finish that word. But there it is. Welcome, NPC. Glad you could be here. I hope you are back to the microphone.
I am back.
Excellent. Do you like that news? What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't want to comment.
Well, he's much nicer than I am.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the screen deal fixed here. I think I have it figured out.
Okay. Well, as we get ready for that, I'll just tell everybody how... Oh, it's working. I can see it from here. I'll let everybody also know that I recorded with. I feel like there's an echo coming through your.
Oh, so sorry. I forgot to put my headphones on.
Ah.
Pardon me, folks.
Ooh. Anyway, I just recorded today with two new folks that you have not seen me do anything live with or recording wise, and I'm very excited to say we covered two movies. We covered The Truman Show and V for Vendetta, and next time we get together we will be covering Boondock Saints, which I think we need more of those vigilante fighters in our country today like them. Not so much like V for Vendetta though, because it turns out he's super satanic. So there you go.
Oh, really?
Oh, the show is so red. It's so much black, white, and red, and signs of Horus. And they say that the country's been taken over by a conservative religious man, and that's why they're on total lockdown, and they need somebody to fight the system with, like Guy Fawkes did back in the day when we wanted to remember the 5th of November.
Oh my, I see what you mean. Well, that's provocative indeed.
It'll be fun.
Well, so this has not yet happened.
What has
movie thing?
No, we recorded today. So
Oh,
I'm editing it, and I will put it out hopefully in the next couple days.
well, speaking of feature films, I did want to kind of touch on I-Pet-Goat-2 a little bit this evening. I know that was a tad bit unplanned, but we did talk about it a couple weeks ago, I think. And the reason I want to is because I think it did have some relevancy to like today and right now, like this weekend. So I did want to revisit that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some. There was a vaccine thing I wanted to mention. Some scriptures in Leviticus 23 that talks about why we're to do the things we're supposed to do on the Day of Atonement, Feast of Trumpets, etc. What those things mean. Because tonight is supposed to be the first night that the moon will show the crescent. And so when the first and second priests were to see this, they're to sound the shofar with a series of different blasts. And so we'll talk about that too. And that's what being a watchman is all about, right? Because we're supposed to be watching for Christ's return. So, so we'll talk about that. And I wanted to cover a few other news stories, like about how the government's talked about using emergency powers for vaccination, things like that. I woke up to being censored on Instagram this morning, and it was largely due to my post about a vaccination. It was a vaccination meme, actually. And it had been fact-checked by somebody, I guess, or an AI. I don't know how it's done. And citing a particular article. And so it was considered totally false. And what was so alarming about that in particular was that the website that they linked me to, it said that not only was my post about vaccines false, because it was about how to decline a vaccine, right? I'm sure you've seen that meme about how to decline a vaccine. Well, indeed, it's wrong, apparently, and you cannot decline a vaccine is what the website kindly informed me of. So I just wanted to kind of share with people my little experience, because I don't even really post a lot of things that are controversial, and to me it was just a meme. I didn't even attach text to it or anything,
They're getting better with the memes, and we did know that because who was it? It was who's that creepy guy of Trump's buddy that was on the plane to Epstein? He's a lawyer, but he starts with a D.
Dershowitz.
Whatever, yeah, him. That
Alan Dershowitz.
Alan Dershowitz, yeah. He said that he said that on a live show with this kind of bigger channel guy. I can't remember his name, doesn't matter. But they said you cannot refuse a vaccine legally. You cannot legally refuse a vaccine in this country somehow. I don't know how that will actually play out when Trump sends out his military to strongly urge us, or whatever he said, powerfully send it. He'll powerfully distribute this vaccine with Operation Warp Speed.
I have the article.
Yep. Okay.
We're gonna go over it. In fact, I forgot to bring that one up. We'll just go ahead and go over it now. It's right here. Went to load. So yeah, this is something that has been out for a little while, but Trump's been sneaking in all these little executive orders, which it's kind of strange because executive orders are really only supposed to be used to enforce existing laws. So it's like if there was this old law on the books, for instance, and he's seen it's not being enforced properly, and if it were, it would have a beneficial outcome. For instance, his executive order would be, hey, this law isn't being followed, let's enforce this law, and for this reason, and so on and so forth. That's really what an executive order is supposed to be, but he's not supposed to be able to craft legislation and stuff. So his Twitter language a lot of times indicates like exactly how his executive order policy is. So I'm not trying to be, I know people support Trump. I'm not trying to stir people up. I'm just pointing things out like this right here. So the memorandum on the extension of the use of National Guard to respond to COVID-19 and facilitate economic recovery. So what you're going to notice is the thread through a lot of these things is economic recovery, vitality, stimulation, et cetera, et cetera.
Which is what the CARES Act supposedly talks about. However, it seemed like it was just a placeholder because the CARES Act was started a year before COVID-19 even started, and it just became this nice placeholder for, oh, hey, we'll use this, and we'll, yeah. Anyway, go on.
Oh, now that you mention it, now that we've stumbled across that data about how they've been ordering the test kits, what was it, in 2017?
And 18, yep.
So that goes right along with the CARES Act. What a coincidence, right?
Right.
So, let's continue here. Now, this is an extension, so I don't know when the original was issued, but this one was August 3rd. So like I said, this has been a while, but I wanted to revisit what was being talked about then. So this was for Florida, of course. So you have to look for them for your individual states, but he's mentioned this in his speeches, how he would use the National Guard. And I have I do have an article actually. Before I go too far, I want to make sure I sent that to myself, and I'll share it down in the I gotta share this stuff with you guys.
Yeah, somebody was asking about the meme. Do you have an image of the meme you can pull up real quick, or?
Yeah, I think I even have the story they linked me to, in fact. Because like what it was, some self-righteous journalist had actually found the meme, I think, maybe even the source, and she'd went on full attack mode. But anyway, I'll have to look for that later. Anyway, let me continue here.
Okay.
I might have already had it up here. As you can see, there's numerous tabs. We're going to try to cover as much as possible, so I'm not going to linger too long on any one thing. But as you can see, this one just outlines things for Florida. And so this isn't the exact link I wanted to show in regards to that, but one of them. So that's what this kind of stuff represents, in my opinion, which is why I wanted to start talking about it, because we're going to see a theme through here. See, this is some type of camp setting, right, with the flood lighting and the concertina wire inward, which is to keep people in, not out, right? So you'll notice also there's the school, and so I think that might be this one right here. There's that old lady. That's actually the fig tree. Oh, I can't find it. There she is. Yeah. Then this one right here, they're in the school, right? So we got a school. We got a concentration camp type. Some religious symbolism and stuff also. So we're going to talk about a few of those things. But since we're in the season to discuss this. I wanted to talk about that right now. Make sure there was actually 2 of these. One of them is lit up. So this one right here is lit up, but the other one's lit up all around. This one's just like focused on her. And then you see the rabbit back here, the exit sign, and then this buck deer. Okay, so a buck deer is a male deer, and then a buck rabbit is a male rabbit as well. And so we had the buck moon, I believe that was, what was it, June 21st, I believe. There was an eclipse then, I think. So I think this right here, around the time of this Gemini type figure, would probably really oh wait, it was July 4th, I think. Yeah. So this is June. And then as we went into July, I think the buck moon eclipse might have been July 4th. So if somebody wants to check that for me, they can. It'd be called the BUC buck moon, I think. Let me tilt my screen. All right. So as you notice, they illuminate those things because they want us to notice it. But the deer over here is representing September. If you notice, deer are starting to get their horns now, right? And so it's illuminated here by the red light. So some interpretations of this could be like a rapture type thing, because a lot of people think at the Feast of the Trumpets that would happen. And, you know, if indeed that were true, they would have blown the trumpets already in Jerusalem, because the crescent moon has formed already. So it may not in fact be today, but, you know, tomorrow is supposed to be the Day of Atonement, for instance, which is it could represent the bride of Christ. But if you notice also, she's very young here. There's one other panel, and I regret that I don't know exactly where they're all at. So we'll try to go through them in order here in a short minute to make sure we don't miss them. But this is more like the maiden. Then there's the lady who's a little older, and she's the one that's protesting in front of the tanks and stuff. That too, where it's showing the yin yang, but then it goes from dark and light to all light. So we'll mention her. And then the one that you might have seen in a frame or two there was the crone, which represents the older lady. Excuse me. And so what we'll, if I can find her, go ahead and show her real quick. Now, notice she's got fig leaves on her dress. I've never heard anybody talk about this, so I wanted to mention that because I felt that was very, very important. And because if you notice, she's got a cane and everything. She's aged, right? So the fig tree is supposed to be 70 years, right? At the end of Daniel's 70 weeks. And so here also, if you notice, she is again fertile, right? But then we notice she's been in this tower for a long time. Notice all the hash marks on the wall. She's been counting all the days, right? And so it's like she's been waiting on her bride. The bride and the groom are reuniting it. So this is Hierophant film is really it's about revelation, but it's also about alchemy and stuff too. And this, somebody posted this. I wanted to share this. They said the sun over Youngstown, Ohio, yesterday. This was caused by the fires in the west, but they said the Star of David over the community.
Wow, that's creepy. Makes you wonder why why would the Lord want to have a Star of David shine over this Ohio town, though? You know.
Well, even so, it is a prominent, star. But the reason I wanted to show it is because it does appear in this. Now, what's odd about that, in my opinion, is that I don't think this is actually the shape that the statue sits on. I'm not so sure that's the same number of spikes, but whether or not it is or isn't. But folks have really been talking about the Statue of Liberty here lately, And you mentioned dreams and stuff earlier, and I've been hearing people talk about dreams about this thing. Well, we don't have to necessarily talk about that. To talk about some things about it that are important is that it is made of copper. So right there, in my opinion, it has more of an association with Venus. Because if you notice also, it's got the green color around it. So we're going to talk about this blue and green here in a minute. And so if I can find it, yeah, right here. The Venus scheme was signaled by the Venusian planet Logos on his fifth change. According to Hindu tradition, each chakra center also has its associated color. You can see that the fifth chakra is Lucifer, the color blue, which I didn't know that. So if these things aren't true, I'm sorry, but this is just some of the research that I came across here recently. And because it's about the occult and Alice Bailey and stuff like that, so I thought it would relate. And Bailey calls her logos laconic kundalini. What's for each chakra is a logos into itself. Bailey says that the first planetary logos is called the first Kumara, the one initiator, and he came to this planet from Venus, an allusion to the Lucifer and his traditional association with Venus, son of the morning. Elsewhere, she writes that the goal for the planetary logos is God consciousness, and that the illuminating light of the fifth logos, Lucifer, fifth throat chakra, is felt at the third initiation. Let me see if I extended the panels here. Yeah. Throat is awakened. Notice how Sanat, they say Satan. Kumara is also identified with the spiritual pineal gland and the planetary head center. This would correspond to the seventh chakra. Chakras are also called the energy centers. So Bailey's planetary centers fits within the chakra teaching. And then we see here that it's blue, right? And of course, there's the star. Now, that's got more than 8 tines on it, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, maybe not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's got 9, I think. But anyway, it's supposed to have 8, I believe. But as you can see, that does have some type of significance here with the I lost it. So this star right here. And so I personally think this could represent this Venusian type figure, like a hermaphroditic thing. A lot of folks say it's a man or it's a woman. I've heard both people say, or different people say that they're both different genders. So, and notice also it's on the waters. So it could, in fact, represent some type of transmuted entity, Venus. And let's go back to the beginning here. All right, so let's go to the next panel here. I tried to do my best to keep these things in order. The stuff after this, a lot better order. 3 is out here on this also, and I haven't seen anybody cover that, so I wanted to mention that too, because does it let me go up? No, it won't let me go up. Well, anyway, up here on the clock tower, it's at 12 on the dot. So that too, I think, is important because a lot of folks might not be aware of it, but there's something called the doomsday clock, and they always talk about it being minutes to midnight, right? And of course, it's a tower, and then there's a lightning bolt right here. So the tower tarot card often features a lightning bolt, and it signifies change and rapid, but often brought by God, like divine intervention type change, divine judgment. So let's read Psalm 23. Is the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And it goes on, I think I actually posted that.
He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, and leadeth me beside the still waters. He leads me to paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. He prepares a table before me, prepares a table of mine enemies before me. anointeth my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that very much. So anyway, that was painted out here as graffiti. Oops, there we go. And this right here is the classroom where the little girl's sitting with the Obama figure. And when the apple rolls out from her, the circle that she's sitting in, it pans out to this right here. Of course, they're accenting it with the light. So if you read it real carefully, it says
Looks
Psalm
like lightning.
23.
Looks like lightning.
Yeah,
coming from
exactly. It. Which, again, the tower here corresponds with that. And so if we, I'm not sure exactly where this is in the Hierophant landscape, so to speak, but wherever it is, this seems to be some type of representation of the fire that's always kept burning. There's a lot of different traditions that link back to that. And in fact, Apollo's traditions, I think, might be represented by this, like the Apollyon concept. And so this figure here, if you notice, this was only here for a frame or two, but these waves come up when he's dancing. So as he performs his Nataraja, which is the dance of destruction, these waves come up. And here he looks somewhat amphibious, like a frog, right? So this could represent some type of elemental thing. And of course, he's got a feather. So the next one here is a little more obvious that this represents Shiva or Kali Ma. She's associated with destruction. So this figure is dancing what's known as the Nataraja, like I said, the dance of destruction. And so as it progresses, the forms change. And as it changes, different things happen. Remind folks that this is the statue beside CERN.
Yep, right outside
right
of
here?
CERN, where they had their mock ritual of, I can't think. Anyway, they had a mock ritual of killing a virgin or whatever.
Well, yeah, whether or not it was real, it was still weird. But yeah, this is actually modeled off the Orion constellation. So we're going to cover that again in a future episode about Orion, and we're going to go into depth about, there's a lot of different myths associated with this, and it seems to have influenced a lot of different cultures. But this was a connection that I had not yet made, was that it actually is associated with the destroyer. And as you might have seen, there we go, the number 666 as a destructive force. But what exactly does the number 666 signify for the future of man and the planet Earth? In answering this question, this fella explains the law of karma, reincarnation, and rebirth. He says that at the end of the present age or new age, certain destructive forces will be unleashed on the world. These forces, which take a triangular shape, constitute heavenly karma or cosmic justice, just like the maiden, lady, and crone archetype as well. There will be a great initiation of all mankind, Cole reveals, and the number 666 will be instrumental in both carrying out cosmic justice, it will be destructive, it says, and in initiating mankind into the new age. According to this guy, the number 666, okay, he continues. I didn't get the next panel from this. So I just wanted to include that because it went along with this theme here, that, they're invoking these things, I think, on patterns and trying to achieve a certain outcome, which we see here with the destruction of a mosque. So this could, in fact, probably represent the Osca Mosque, I believe it's called, the one that sits on the supposed Temple Mount. But I would contend that the temple was probably built in the city of David, where the Gihon Spring was, because they said that they needed a lot of water to wash away all the sacrificial blood. So, I think it makes more sense to say it was there and not on the Temple Mount. But be that as it may, this signifies some type of destruction may occur. Now, what's important to note here is that this is the moon phase, not exactly probably, but this is pretty close to the moon phase that we got right now. This symbol actually represents in the real world is that it's just this one looks a little bit thicker. But right now, Venus is sitting in an occulted position to this shape. So we're in the date range of when this symbol is actually depicted on the flag of, is it Iran? I think Iran's flag has this particular symbol on it. It's got a star right here. So anyway, this figure here also seems to represent some type of resurrected, purified figure. Again, there's the moon being represented here, and the Apollyon force seems to be the product of Apollo and Artemis. And let me make sure I didn't miss something. Now that I'm through most of that, it should be mostly in order after this. And then the reason I wanted to mention this is because one of the things associated with Apollo, and just for the sake of that, it's got the association here. This is called a paean, a song or lyric poem expressing triumph or thanksgiving. In classical antiquity, it is usually performed by a chorus, but some examples seem intended for an individual voice. It comes from the Greek song of triumph, any song or chant. Paean was also the name of a divine physician and epithet of Apollo. So the reason I wanted to mention that is this is actually one of his names, and it's a song of victory, and it's something that was meant to be sung on the battlefield. So what I find interesting is not to suggest that this figure is some type of substitution for, a divine figure in Revelation, but to suggest that, because John was probably using Greek ideas at the very least to explain some things that seem to be a mystery still today. So, and because Greece was one of the parts of the tower in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, I think that he would.
Uh-oh, got a poor network connection. Let's give it a second here. Hopefully this comes back and we don't have to start over. Come on, Lord Jesus, I pray for our network connection. Lord, I pray against these demonic technology demons. We reject them, cancel their ability to work, and thank you that you give us authority over these things. And he's back. Okay, you were gone for about 30 seconds.
Oh, well, I paused to drink some coffee.
No,
So
it
that
was
was
a
kind of
network.
weird.
It was a network connection thing. So, just carry on. Oh, geez. Somebody
Well,
just said Erin and her dial-up connection. I'll have you know, Mr. Black Eagle, that I have actually improved my internet connection, but these things happen.
well,
Anyway,
it's
go on.
funny because I didn't. One moment, I'm going to take a drink of coffee. I didn't even know that it had dropped out.
Yeah.
So, I was talking about this peon thing.
Yes.
Did you catch any of that?
Yes, and that it was another name for Satan, I think you said, and the
Oh my,
song.
that was a while back. Oh, the song thing is another
Yeah.
name for Apollo.
Another name for Apollo. Sorry. Okay, go from there.
So anyway, find where I was down here. Such songs were originally addressed to Apollo and afterward to other gods such as Dionysus, Helios. Helios is important in this regard because he was more like the sun god, and then taught Apollo how to deal with the sun. So then it was transferred to him. So that's why the ambiguity sometimes occurs there. And then Asclepius is a physician. About the 4th century, the adulation, which is like a form of worship, right? So I'm thinking that he might have used this because the 144,000 are taught a song also, and all this destruction in Babylon's occurring while these people are being taught a song. So I wanted to mention this because this is the type of song that you play during war, like in the midst of battle. And so because it's this kind of scene is depicted in Revelation, and this association with Apollo seems to keep cropping up, I wanted to share this thing that I found today. So I think that was about all on the topic with that. But anyway, I'm gonna have to make a hard segue into a different type of frequency, because it's not music, but it's still a frequency. So there we go. So we're going to start here. Now from here on, it'll be a little more consistent topics. Google's trying to secretly test a 6G network. Does it surprise anybody though? I mean, really?
No, of course not.
So in 17 different states, according to a batch of FCC filings spotted by the Business Insider. But what exactly Google is trying to test is unclear. Here are a few things to know. Google to experiment with 6G spectrum to produce technical information relevant to the utility of these frequencies for providing reliable broadband connections. See, I always want to help you. That's the reason for everything. The company also says it expects the experiments, I use the word experiments, to take place over 24 months. Now, mind you, where are we at here in this date range? This is August 17th, everyone. Successfully? Yeah. Okay. August 17th. So the next 24 months. It'll end in a couple summers then. So look forward to 6G. The company also says it expects experiments to take place over 24 months and has asked permission to do the test in 26 cities and towns across 17 states, including Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, Nevada, New York, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, Utah, and Virginia. Beyond that, there's not a lot you can tell from these documents, and there are a lot of possibilities for what Google might want to do with the 6G spectrum. Providing reliable broadband connections, quote unquote, language could suggest that Google wants to experiment with some kind of internet service, Internet of Things, rings a bell, perhaps a potential offering under the Google Fiber Web Pass banner. But Google could have other uses for 6G spectrum as well. Only recently did FCC approve a plot of unlicensed 6G spectrum, and any number of things could take advantage of that. Wi-Fi, 6E routers might run at 6 gigahertz, as could vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and the suggest unlicensed 6G spectrum could be even used for 5G cellular networks. Google's not limited to existing ideas, though. It's called unlicensed spectrum for a reason. That's very unsettling.
Yes, it is.
Know about the sky's the limit. The thing to know about 6G is that it's expected to allow for faster and more reliable connections that can carry more bandwidth than 2.4 gigahertz or 5.0 gigahertz connections you might already be familiar with. And there could be less wireless interference between classes as well. But just like 5 gigahertz, Wi-Fi offers shorter range than 2.4 Wi-Fi. It is likely the 6 gigahertz network ranges will have a shorter range still, just like the 5G stuff. It has to be so close together because it's such a dense signal. So they're saying that this is going to be a type of weakness too. So these might have to be even closer together than 5G towers, if you can imagine that. So that's kind of hard to imagine, actually. All right now, but the filings tell us that Google's hoping to use the newly opened 6G spectrum for some sort. Here's what secret commercially valuable plan. That sounds too much like Trump's type of way of talking. I'm sure whatever it is, it'll be tremendous. All right, so let's move on to the.
Yeah, well, he's trying to get 5G everywhere. We know that it's this fight. I say fight. It's a battle of AI between China and us. Uh-oh, we've got a poor connection.
Are you there?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just making sure I didn't drop you.
Okay, yeah, I was just talking anyway. I was saying that's kind of the battle for Trump for 5G, and he wants it even in the country, and it's this battle with China for AI, I believe, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a battle for sure. I really need to go over some things here, and I'm sorry about that. I kind of took it for granted. People already knew that these things represent each month, and we think anyway. Collectively think that's the case. And this one seems to be June just because it's Gemini and it's joined here. So that's one of the reasons predominantly for thinking that, which if that's on the summer side here, with July being here, and then this being some time.
Oh my goodness. Oh, if you guys would be willing to pray for the stream. And he's back. You were just about to talk about the winter months on the left.
I'm so sorry. I even turned off the VPN.
That's okay. Just go. We were going to talk about the winter months before you got cut off, so go ahead.
So anyway, because this is associated with the one looking into this here, there's a Greek word for escape that is used in some scripture. I can't remember which one it is, and I didn't have time to get it before the show. But that was one thing I wanted to share, and I just didn't have prepared. So if anybody that's interested in that wanted to look up the Greek word for escape and then find the scripture that's associated with that in the text, that's the link I was trying to make there. But anyway, this would indicate that it happens in this type of month span right here with the fall. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this in terms of this right here is it didn't have to necessarily mean for us individually here in the United States. I think it's definitely true for Israel. They're already on lockdown, in fact. So if you give me just a second, I'll try to find it. I have so much stuff. I'm so sorry.
What do you want to find? The Greek word for?
Just lit up one.
You wanted to find the Greek word.
The Greek word for exit or escape. I think it's escape. That's the one I was. Because if you notice here, it's not lit up, and it's not until a certain point in time she drops her head. And then the lights go off, but then this lights up, and then this lights up right here. And so the attention then, of course, is drawn to these things. But there's a Greek word for escape or exit. Anyway, whenever it's lit up, you can see the lily here too. So I do think that this kind of maybe indicates this. It does, in fact, indicate the fall side. Now, what's interesting about that is she, however, in what looks to be like a circle of honey, right, which is associated with Rosh Hashanah. And if we notice also, this is a little glob of light within this here. So the Hierophant logo is actually represented by this eclipse with a little dot out from it. So she's literally sitting within the Hierophant logo itself, and this, in a lot of cases, a point within a circle would represent what's called the Ein Sof, or the the non-devised spirit, like if you a male and female spirit joined together or something like that. That's basically what she's representing. As a maiden, like she's the bride of the bride for the groom, so to speak, right? This is also known as a circle of protection too in some cases. And one other thing that I'm not so sure this is necessarily intended, but these people kind of look like moons to me, like little moons, like moon children or something. I'm not so sure that's a big connection. They just look like they got craters and stuff in them too, when you really take a good close look at them. But they're not really, they don't have faces really. They're emotionless. I mean, they don't really seem to be animated like her, So I don't think we're really paying attention to them and past the month stuff. But
let me interrupt you for a second. So if I look up Strong's for the word escape, a primitive root properly to wander away, that is to lose oneself by implication, to perish, break, destroy. Not escape, fail, lose, cause to make, perish, spin, and surely take to be undone. It's very hard. But total KJV occurrences are 184, so I don't know which scripture there's different versions of the word.
And I couldn't find it.
There's different Strongs, there's G's and H, there's different ones, a lot of them. To save thoroughly, that is to bring safe, to escape or survive.
I kind of meant in the context of like the cities of refuge or something. I didn't expect to have the answer. I just wanted to mention it because I was hoping that maybe somebody could help find out why this is. I mean, because I don't know, but I think that we're in the time that this is relevant. So I wanted to go ahead and share it anyway.
Well, there's less for exit. There's only 4 on that one, so exit's got less.
Hey, yeah. I wasn't sure how it would translate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, back to you.
Because see, the reason I'm making that point is because I remember which one it is. It's the one that has a snare in it. Is there one that had a snare in it? In the scripture, one of the 4?
Well, I'd have to let's see. Going forth, an egress, the place, an exit, a source or product, specifically dawn, rising of the sun. Let's see, exit, that is boundary, deliverance, source, from a compound, meaning exit or an end way of escape, or an exit for death.
Well, death is featured in this film, so I think that could be a plausible explanation. Because Heliophant, like we were talking about with Apollo and Helios, is associated with the sun. So the sun is beginning to die here. So it could just be a simple representation of the sun's dying light as
well, this is certainly a struggle tonight with our signal. And he's back. You were gone for about 10 seconds there.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Guys, I'm sorry. I even shut down my VPN, so I don't know what to tell you.
No worries.
Okay, well, anyway, the reason I wanted to focus here that's around these folks, wire in the very first scene with the goat, right? And so there it is again, featured lockdowns and stuff. And right here, government approves high holy day regulations. Lockdown starts Friday. So if you listened to the peace, what was it? The Abraham Accord signing ceremony on September 15th. It was Wednesday, maybe, or Tuesday. Excuse me. It was Tuesday. It was right immediately after that, the lockdowns began. In fact, while they were still signing the paperwork, there were bombings going on in southern Israel and Gaza. back and forth. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to read this.
Yeah.
So here we go. So the government approves High Holy Day regulations. Lockdown starts Friday. The regulations were approved only 30 hours before the closure is set to start. Now the connect. Quote, I consulted with all the senior officials, most of them with advanced degrees and experts in the field, and asked them whether there is a chance that the infection rate will go down under these conditions. Edelstein said at the ministerial hearing, and Chapter 12 reported, to quote, to my great disappointment, I did not find anyone who was optimistic, quote. The regulations will be submitted for discussion by the Constitution, Law, and Justice Committees. They were delivered to the ministers as a 27-page document with extensive details on each topic, large and small. Here they are. Please check thoroughly. Dates. Travel limited to 500 meters from the home. Can travel to parks, playgrounds within 500 meters, etc. So, and this is just a screenshot, by the way. Sorry, I don't have the article. I might actually have it. But this is just a snapshot of what they'll likely be doing for us, if and when we have a more locked down type setting, But that's exactly what they did there. And, what is this one? This is I think somebody asked for this one. Sorry, let me get that. That's the one about the vaccines.
Yep.
Yep, this is the one I was looking for. Government could use emergency powers to give the public an unlicensed vaccine with midwives and soldiers trained up to administer it. Yeah, this is the one, guys. September 17th, the government could use emergency powers to vaccinate the public against COVID-19. It was revealed last night. Ministers
This is fun.
now we're seeing it in. Did it leave again?
Not for long. You're good. Keep going.
Man, I tell you, I could talk about football. I doubt it'll do it.
I'm sure.
So anyway, we were talking about Israel a minute ago and how they're locking down, and this one here is about Europe. So the government could use emergency powers, and it says here that the EU laws could become available prior to the end of the Brexit transition agreement on December 21st. Even a possible vaccine has not been passed by the European Medicines Watchdog. The government will push to use it due to the threat of the pandemic. Let me go ahead and share this since we're having connection issues anyway. Oh, wait, did it work?
Yeah, you were able to.
Okay.
You shared it already. It's good.
I don't know what's working and what's not. Sorry. A consultation on the plans at midnight on Friday. The Independent Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, the JCVI, is advising ministers on the use of any vaccine. The government is keen to quell fears. An unlicensed vaccine is unsafe and said it will go through. I have heard some late third and early fourth quarter, when some people expect, like when I hear people in the market talk about stuff like that. So that I think that more realistically, it might be something like that, but some of the dates I've seen are much earlier than that. The document says if a suitable COVID-19 vaccine candidate with strong supporting evidence for safety, quality, and efficacy becomes a
Oh, well, anyway, you guys got the article. You can totally read it on your own, even though we can't seem to get it out there and read about it.
Stargate uh, Stargate episode about this. One planet they went to used a vaccine that was untested and it killed everybody.
Which you're going to get to, aren't
It's
you
also
going to talk
revealed-
about what happened with the AstraZeneca and why they're on pause? You will get to that probably, right?
I think I got that one too.
No, just keep going. I'll ask you later.
It's this one. Yeah, this is the next one. It's the very
Great.
next one.
Okay.
The training is expected to start later in August so that the expanded workforce can assist the annual series of flu jabs. It comes as come into effect in the northeast of England, taking in total number of people across the UK in lockdown and to more than 10 million. The new restrictions over Northumberland, North Tyneside, South Tyneside, Newcastle upon Tyne, Gateshead, Sunderland, and County Durham, and began at midnight. People outside their household. Entertainment venues must be closed at 10 p.m. This is so psychotic. Like, good God. Sorry for expressing my grief.
It is psychotic. Because Australia is doing the same thing. And in fact, they have their
yeah, I got a story
curfew
in Australia too.
Their curfew is at 8 p.m. and it's not because they're afraid of spreading the virus allegedly. It's because the police asked for the curfew because it makes their all the stuff that they need to get everybody on, all the new protocols or whatever. It's easier if everybody's just inside by 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I mean, nanny state, quite literally. It's ridiculous. I'm not going to go on and on and on, but let's see. The government will set out further details on Friday. So this was what? When was this? September 17th. So yeah. So they're going to announce today. There's supposed to be some additional stuff announced. See what else they might say here. New testing figures for England show that 33.3% of people, that's an awfully exact figure, who were swabbed at the regional site, local site, or mobile testing unit, despite the promises that they would all be. So it's saying here some 73.9% of close contacts of people who tested positive for COVID in England were reached through the test and trace system in the week ending September 9th, up from 69.5% of the previous week, but below the 77.2% reached in the week. Man, this is all during the summertime too. That's what's so disconcerting.
Right, just wait. Just wait.
Oh, good gosh. Was it when I said 33.3?
It must have been.
Well, I'll tell you what.
He was about to tell us what, but we don't know what that was. I appreciate. Hold on, NPC. Hold on. I appreciate everybody who's sticking this out. I know it's a little rough because it's cutting in and out the way it is, but we're going to keep pushing on, so keep going, NPC.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Good golly. I wish
sorry.
it at least made a noise when it did that.
Fine. It does for me, but I don't know why it doesn't for you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, anyway, here's a concept known as Dunbar's number. The max number of relationships a person can maintain is around 150. Well, that may not be true for everybody, but, if you think about over the course of your lifetime, though, that's kind of what that number is indicating, I think. And so what they're effectively doing is they want to shrink everybody's bubble down to like this. And then of course, everybody's like telling on each other for everything for as fines and stuff. I've been hearing fines can be as steep as I think in California it can be as steep as like $400. But that's the highest I've heard so far. But anyway, here's another document I saw online. One of these consent forms that, they're just using in like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to dox anything. They just said here's what I wanted to point out. In the absence of a signed consent refusal from the parent carer, your child will be given the opportunity to legally consent for themselves to have these immunizations. If they can demonstrate that they are able to fully understand what is involved in the decision that they are making, how could they? They're a child. Similarly, if you consent on behalf of your child and they refuse the vaccination, it will not be given. So that's somewhat. But here's the thing. I would make sure that your child reflects your parental beliefs when they're going to these care facilities, because if there's any chance whatsoever they can still refuse something like that, hopefully they have the fortitude to refuse it. But is from this place, so I'm not trying to say that this is the case for everybody, but stated. So if you get stuff like this from your school for your child, just make sure to read it and try to understand what it's saying, and make sure your children, are informed as well. This is the AstraZeneca. Are you there?
I'm here. Yes. Sorry.
I'm just, I'm sorry.
I should probably say something once in a while, like still here.
I just wonder now.
Still here. Yeah, were you good?
Pardon me. Let me get this shared here. Oh yeah, rewards for snitching on your neighbors. Wait till they start giving cryptocurrency to people for doing that.
Oh yeah, of course.
See something, say something, man. All right, so this article here is internal AstraZeneca safety report sheds light on neurological conditions suffered by vaccine trial participants. So this is where they said, whoa, baby, slow up.
Yeah, they had to pause their trials.
September 17th. And I'm not going to go into a lot of depth here, but...
Do they say what happened? Does it tell us?
That's what I was looking for, actually.
Because they called it unexplained illness, but I heard it was a attack on her nervous system.
Yeah, right here it is.
There it is, transverse myelitis.
You seen it on the screen?
Yeah, go up a little bit.
Yeah, right here.
There it is.
Reports claiming to be based on comments made earlier today by the CEO stating that we have confirmed that a participant in our clinical trial suffered from transverse myelitis are incorrect. He stated that there is no final diagnosis, that there will be
liars.
That there will not be one until more tests are carried out. This test will be delivered to an independent study committee that will review the event and establish a final diagnosis. A spokesperson said.
Can I interrupt for a second and tell people what transverse myelitis is? Transverse myelitis is an inflammation of both sides of one section of the spinal cord. This neurological disorder often damages the insulating material covering the nerve cell fibers, aka myelin. So if a person gets like multiple sclerosis, their myelin sheath eventually goes away. Also known to happen in Guillain-Barré, but it's allegedly temporary in Guillain-Barré. Also seems to be caused by the flu shot, Guillain-Barré. So it's very interesting that these vaccines are attacking our myelin sheaths of our nerve tracts, which means we can't send the signal from our brain to those nerve tracts. This woman allegedly couldn't use her hands or her feet. Transverse myelitis interrupts the messages that the spinal cord nerves send throughout the body. This can cause pain, muscle weakness, paralysis, sensory problems, or bladder and bowel dysfunction. Now, Guillain-Barré is very similar, and it is very much associated with the flu shot. Guillain-Barré, my brother-in-law had it, and he was on a ventilator for 7 months. He was in the hospital for 11 months, and he still to this day has residual pain his feet. This is an attack on the myelin sheath of our nervous system. It's something that can paralyze you. It's something that can cause eternal pain for the rest of your life. You know, this is so
Like
serious,
phantom
and
pain?
this is real pain because it attacks your nervous system, attacks your nerves. So it's real pain that's happening because your nerves are no longer functioning correctly. And he could have died. He was one of the few people to survive that long on a ventilator in a hospital with Guillain-Barré the way that he did. So I'm not saying this because it's a personal story. You know, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to fight the system. Because even back then, this was years ago, I didn't believe it was a vaccine that did it. But now I'm looking back and knowing vaccines, they attack your nervous system and your myelin sheath and cause MS-like behaviors, but very quickly. And so, very big deal that this is already doing that right off the bat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's clear that. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, by the way. They said that this one was not getting warp speed money, the BARDA money.
They are too. They are too. AstraZeneca is part. We saw that. They're part of the group that is even backing Moderna. Come on, that is BS right there. They are too.
That's kind of funny. So CNN Health laying it out. You know, we know better.
Jeez.
Maybe they're just trying to wash their hand.
Well, is that a Trump thing? Because I would be surprised because Trump is the one that started Operation Warp Speed. So he's gone, but he'll be back. Trump's the one that started Operation Warp Speed. So
that are vital to the national.
Hold on. Hold on. You went away for a second, but Trump is the one that started Operation Warp Speed. So isn't it weird that CNN is telling us, "Oh, don't worry, this is not attached to that." That's odd.
You'd think they'd be all over him.
Right.
There are very sensitive issues, and Operation Warp Speed is seeding or delegating critically important communications that are vital to the national security interest of the nation, Hotez said. In response, Operation Warp Speed's told on Tuesday that questions regarding details and data on trial participants and trial pauses must be referred to the trial regulatory sponsors coordinating. What a political response. Hold on, I'm trying to get to the meat. Let's read this. Hotez added that complete communication about the trials, including participants who become ill, could have a dire effect, not just on AstraZeneca vaccine, but on other coronavirus vaccines that have received federal funding. If they botch their communication on this, Americans will refuse to accept the vaccine, and this will have a spillover effect on the other Operation Warp Speed vaccines.
No
so they're
kidding.
trying to separate themselves.
Yes, they are. But we know that they're part of it. Tell everyone
It's
you
so
know, guys,
funny.
they're part of it because they're trying to act. This is where CNN and this is where we don't have bipartisan. This is where CNN and Trump can agree. Come on.
Yeah, that's. Oh, I forgot to touch on this. This is one of those other scenes from the I-Pet-Goat thing. Echo character. I've heard some other YouTubers talk about this. If you go to the Helio characters and this reptilian type character with the one eye, he is called Draco. So he would be the dragon, right? And we also see that the dragon is coiled up around this egg, which a lot of times the egg symbolized with a snake around it indicates like the birth of the new age. But anyway, as you can see here, he's waiting to devour the child. And that relates to this here. Jared Kushner is saying the stage is set for further Arab-Israeli deals. And this is the second time that I've heard him use the specific words 3.5 years, which is 1,260 days, as it mentions in Revelation. So I think this period of time is the prophetic amount of time of the birth in Revelation 12, because it talks about that. So the bride of Christ, as it's shown Well, maybe her too, but I think she represents Israel. I think, but the little young one or whatever, the one that's for marriage. I can't find her. But anyway, there's another one that's battling the tanks too, and I don't know where she's at on here. But anyway, let me make sure we don't skip over this article. Sorry to keep going back to the I-Pet-Goat
That's
stuff,
okay.
but sometimes they're peppered throughout here. I can't remember where I put them, but I tried to put them where they were most relevant. Here's another CDC article, by the way. Wanted to touch on this because this is the one that how they want everybody to have the vaccine by November 1st. Oh, yeah. Hold on here. Alt tab. There we go. What's RGB?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh,
RBG.
I'm so sorry. I tried not to comment and then brought
up. Why wouldn't you comment about this? Come on.
Well, I don't want to. She's
been dead for over a year.
It's bad karma.
She's been dead for. There's no such thing as karma. Come on now.
Oh, I thought it just happened.
Yeah, well, they're finally announcing it. They're finally announcing it. But there's no way she's been alive.
Didn't she just officiated a wedding?
No, she did not. It was photoshopped, and it's easy to prove.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
This is ridiculous. So they hid it for a year?
Oh, yeah, at least. In fact, Fox News or something accidentally put it up in 2019 that she passed. They put up her birth date to death date, and then they took it back down, and they're like, no, she's fine. Everything's fine here.
Man, I must say that is just strange. I didn't realize that's what you meant when you asked me that question. I wasn't like happy she died, but yeah, I didn't know that they hid it from the public. That's bizarre.
Well, they did it. Yeah, they went to extremes, and it was memes all the time. They were joking that here she is going through an airport, but the meme would be like her on a coat rack rolling through. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing that stuff, but I didn't realize it actually was a cover and stuff. I thought they were just kind of joking about it. Was it COVID related, I wonder?
Oh, I didn't even read the article.
I saw her Bill Gates' father also passed as well.
Yes, that's right. Bill Gates' dad is gone too.
Don't get too excited.
I'm hoping Bill is next.
You're starting to make me uncomfortable.
Why would that make you uncomfortable? These are evil people. Joking, it's kind of, if the Lord is, helping us out, that should be an exciting and good thing.
I'm just joking with you.
Okay.
This is the next article I wanted to read though, because we got to lighten the mood, man, because this is what we're getting ready to read here. The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has told state governors and health officials to be ready to distribute a possible coronavirus vaccine by November 1st, reports said. CDC Director Robert Redfield wrote in a letter to the officials last week that the McKesson Corporation, a Texas-based healthcare company, would soon request permits to build distribution sites, and that the process should be expedited, according to The Hill. The normal time required to obtain these permits presents a significant barrier to the success of the urgent public health program, Redfield wrote. According to The Hill, CDC requests your assistance in expediting applications for these distribution facilities, and if necessary, ask that you consider waiving requirements that would prevent these facilities from becoming fully operational by November 1st, 2020. Wolf speed, right? That's
right.
What that sounds like. How fast? Which gear do you want it in, Captain Picard? Documents outlining the distribution of 2 potential vaccines were also sent last week to every state and U.S. territory, along with 5 major cities, according to the New York Times. New York, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, and San Antonio. Spreading it out. These documents describe the 2 unnamed vaccine candidates. They could make a reality TV show out of this, like The Bachelor. Like, which vaccine candidate will it be?
Oh, they should do that. We should do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is just too much. Like, I really feel like I'm in a dream. I just wish I'd wake up. Each of which would require 2 doses spaced, each of which would require 2 doses spaced out weeks apart. I wanted to mention that because I saw that earlier when I was reading this. Pardon me, I have to sneeze. I have allergies.
That's okay. We don't
I
think
don't
that
know
you
when
are going to
sneeze-
spread corona to us.
Ruach
God bless you.
HaKodesh. Thank you. Excuse me. Essential workers, national security employees, senior citizens, and members of particularly vulnerable racial and ethnic groups would be among those prioritized for the treatments. I've heard the Pope make comments about that too. Like if you're what's considered an essential employee, those will be the people, state employees, etc., that they're going to get it, I think, or at least offer the option of keeping your job if you get it. Let's see here. Leading U.S. health officials have voiced skepticism that a vaccine could be developed and approved before the end of the calendar year, while President Trump has accused federal officials of slow-walking the process to hurt his chances of re-election. The November 1st potential ready date is 2 days before the presidential election. As of Wednesday afternoon, the U.S. has seen an alleged 6,088,187 confirmed cases of the virus, with 184,803 alleged deaths attributed to the virus, according to Johns Hopkins University. So there it is, folks. That right there is very compelling. Not only do they want to get it in you, but they want it in you as fast as possible.
They don't want us to have time to think about this.
Now here's I want to point out a couple things here. The things that have made Trump popular in the past with people, especially with the economic boom that seemed to be going prior to the COVID thing. Moving a lot of the restrictions and barriers that were in place that would, let's say a manufacturing facility that wasn't making vaccines could benefit from being, well, let's just waive this stuff. There's a wetland there, sir. Oh, well, we'll do the assessment in a year or two. Just get it up so that we can get these jobs going. That's kind of how they would go in a normal sense, right? Well, in this sense, now we got all those corporations in the past benefiting corporations like Moderna and AstraZeneca now, except they're having to test their stuff, and they're having whistleblowers and stuff come out of the.
And he's gone again. Oh, there he's back.
I think that's
You're back.
part of this. Good Lord, I must say.
Hold on. You just went away when you said AstraZeneca had whistleblowers.
Well, I was just going to say that thank God for that, right? So,
yes.
Anyway,
Thank you.
They have
Thanks,
two
Yeshua.
unnamed. I think part of the reason that they're unnamed is because they don't want any kind of bad press. But as we know, there's several. All you really got to do is go to the BARDA, see who's getting the money, right? It's just a process of elimination at that point to figure out who the candidates are.
Which we did last week, everybody, in case you don't recall or weren't there. We went over that and the amount of money they were getting and how their stocks rose at certain times. So, there you go.
Did I share this article?
Which one?
One I was reading.
The New York Post? Oh, I don't think so.
I did or not. Sometimes I forget. All right. And this one from Australia. So this is the one that bothers me the most, actually, because Australia is pushing new measures to detain conspiracy theory.
Of course they are, because they don't have their guns.
To COVID there, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly. And this will be UK next, essentially.
Yep.
And we'll probably even see it in Canada, I'm sure, at some. I think they can have guns in Canada, but it's just like for home defense and hunting or something.
And you
very
can have them in
limited.
the UK, but it's really hard. It's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork.
You can have them in Germany. It's a lot of work in every country that allows it, other than the United States. So anyway, I wanted to read this a little. How disconcerting it is, but this is 9/18. So this is fairly current, seeing how that's basically today. All right, there you go. Weekend demonstrations have flared up in Australia over the last month, as Aussies have vented their frustrations and attempted to take back control of their communities after a surge in virus cases. Some of the world's most draconian social distancing measures. And if there's one thing that terrifies increasingly tyrannical governments, it's a loss of control of the narrative, which is why the Australian government is getting a jump and curbing any so-called, quote, conspiracy theorists, quote, daring to spread information that questions the fear-mongering used to keep Aussie citizens under lock and key. To be debated by the Victorian government and the state parliament this week. Oh, McGonagall.
You're here. I hear you.
Or you just? Oh, sorry.
I was just saying that. I was just saying sounds terrifying.
Yo, you were yikesing for another reason. Sorry about that.
Oh no, I was saying sorry. Yikes to the article. Excuse me.
It gives local authorities the power to detain, quote, conspiracy theorists and people. I remember who coined the term conspiracy theorist, Aaron.
The CIA.
That's a good trivia. And people who refuse to self-isolate. Man, this is crazy. So if you don't stay in your house, go to your room. Go to your room and wear your mask. This is a nanny state. If omnibus emergency measures allowed the government to detain anyone labeled as a, quote, high risk or likely to spread COVID-19 negligently, such as you.
Oh boy. Well, you can see the article. He's just reading from it. There he is. He's back.
Hello.
Hi, welcome back. Such as was the last time we heard you. Such as.
It's fine, man. You know, I'm gonna take it. It's flattering that whatever it is cares so much that it wants to interfere. So I'll take it as a compliment.
That's a good thing you're sharing the articles because we can see it in front of us too. So as you're reading it, we can still see where you're going.
See, that's the beauty of it. All right. So as you can see here, if you are considered a negligent citizen and that you're a high-risk individual here, we're talking to you, right? So if you wear your mask, you don't have much to worry about, apparently. But this is talking about
stay home.
Pardon?
And if you stay home, comply. Be compliant, obey the government.
So far, many of the anti-lockdown demonstrations have been held on the weekends. At least 200 people.
Oh my goodness. 200 people were
spend time in a quarantine facility.
He's back. Keep going. Just keep going.
Oh, hey, sorry, dude. Clearly, the government's intent is to extend powers and detain conspiracy theorists and those who pose a risk of spreading the virus should be alarming to readers. In a glimpse of what is ahead, authorities have already arrested a Melbourne woman for allegedly writing anti-lockdown posts on social media.
That's a weird thing to say. Pro-anti. Come on. Who wrote this? Tyler Durden again?
Hey, dude. Remember that quantum grammar stuff you're talking about? That's the kind of thing you got to pay attention to. It's like they want to label things, you know?
Very confusing.
But, this could be, put a Pepe on that girl's head, and that could be any one of us.
That's right. Man. Amen. We got to get back on the quantum grammar train, too, one of these days.
So, again, I wanted to revisit something like this. We got United Nations Day, I think, on the 24th of September, and that's something I haven't really heard anybody mention So because of what we saw in I-Pet-Goat here, I felt it was possibly relevant to mention that here we got, this is actually by definition a corona. A crown is made of metal. A corona is, and this is the word used in Revelation when it says a crown was given unto him. It actually isn't a crown, it's a corona. And so this is given to the person on the white horse that has a bow. And of course, that's why I was wanting to talk about Apollo earlier, because he's the one that's stylized with a bow, right? But then he also on his head, which represent victory. And this is where Nike and the crowning of victory and all that stuff comes from, right? So that's the tradition of crowning. And it was customary to ride a white horse after winning a battle. So it says that he goes forth to conquer, and so on and so forth. So indicates that this is a battle that's already been fought and won, and that he's victorious. So just some symbolism there to pay attention to. I'm not sure who or what that points to exactly, but my intuition is that it's the overcomer figure, which might represent like the bride of Christ, like the remnant. They are victorious, right? And they're given the crowns. And this would probably also be those that the locusts from the pit couldn't harm, like the people that were crowned. So if they're part of that, and if that's correct, I don't know. Because it would also explain the rapture, how that would happen before the three horsemen come then, So it would fit into some things, in my opinion, because that's Revelation 6:1, I think, before all the others start. But then all the seals start to open. Let me make sure I didn't miss something. Yeah. Okay. So the equinox is coming up here on the 22nd. That's when light and dark are even. And like I mentioned, there was that yin yang symbol with the lady figure, like the middle. I think that represents the equinox also, because we see the yin yang, light and dark. But then light starts to increase. So I'm not sure if it's a perfect representation of that or not, but maybe. But let's read this. The September equinox occurs at 13:30 universal time, and then the sun will shine directly on the equator, and there will be nearly equal amounts of day and night throughout the world. This is also the first day of the fall, autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere, and the first day of spring, vernal equinox in the southern hemisphere. So that's something also to remember. Now, I'm pretty sure we share the same season then with Israel, being in the north, also considered northern hemisphere. Okay, a bit here too. Now, the main reason I wanted to talk about, because again, these two zodiacal signs, zodiacal signs rather, which are called the Maseroth in the Hebrew tradition. And so this is not the Hebrew one per se, but your mobile, your circle of animals and people, and they all tell the story, right? So that's why they're used in such. Okay, so what you may know is that the Hebrew also modeled after the stars in the constellation. So in my opinion, this is something that reveals all the Bible in English. And we, of course, can use the Strongs to look up the Greek and sometimes the Hebrew. We're not reading it in the native language. So if we do take the time to look at the Hebrew, though, a lot of times, That's why I like to try to break down the Hebrew and Greek, such as like the restrainer, catechon concept and things like that, because I think that there's additional meaning hidden in things like the gematria, or which constellation, the letters and words themselves might be a part of and represent. So this is just something to keep in mind. I'm not trying to confuse folks, but I think within the context of something like Revelation 12:1, for instance, if we took the time to break that down and what the actual Hebrew was in it, we might find that it correlates to, something like, oops, I don't know where it's at now. It might correlate to something like this, the Revelation 12 sign of the woman. So if that's true, we could find some extra information. Jupiter, because if we notice in the Revelation 12 sign, it talks about the moon being at her feet and a crown of 12 stars, etc. And then birth, right? And so this does pass through the legs just like the Jupiter did in that sign. And of course we see in that other panel that the Draco figure is indeed trying to devour. Where was he at? He was wanting to devour the child. So I'm so sorry. I tried so hard to keep these panels organized.
It's hard though when
But anyway,
your brain. It's hard when your brain is going faster than your tabs.
well, if I just had them if I could actually see them in front of me, it'd be different. But anyway, as you can see here, it's like she doesn't know when this is, and we kind of see that maybe indicated by the panel here, where it's all lit up, right?
We're having a difficult stream.
Thessalonians 5:3, sudden destruction occurs. Is the stream working?
Yeah, just repeat what you said about Thessalonians.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say is, so as we can see here, she transitioned from, it gets from light to dark. And so when we notice here, she bows her head down too. So stiff neck individual, she's holding a fruit. And as I've indicated before, the difference between wheat and tares are that wheat form fruit and they bow, whereas tares do not, right? So I think this figure is to represent a pure figure, perhaps the bride of Christ or some type of thing. It turns dark suddenly, right? So to me, this would represent some sudden change, like travail. Apple doesn't actually roll out. It's not birthed out symbolically until this darkness comes, right? And so I can't remember what the word is, but there's a certain word that's associated with the arrival of when when Jesus comes for his bride. It comes in the evening time. There was a word actually used to indicate evening, and I think I might have actually written it down if I look here. No, I didn't. Anyway, oh yeah, I did. The twinkling of an eye. So the twinkling of an eye is a Hebrew phrase, I guess, that refers to coming for the bride or something like that. So to go and meet the bride in the evening. Well, you didn't know when they were actually going to show up. So studying like the deeper context beyond the English language, we can learn a little more about that. So a Hebrew idiom, twinkling of the eye, try doing a search for that. And you might gain some insight there about the marriage parable, like with the wise and foolish virgins and how they, had oil and some didn't. So when the darkness falls, some are going to have oil, some aren't. the marriage ceremony takes place. I think this could be the Revelation 12:1. Fruit harvest. Rosh Hashanah is symbolic of the honey. This Day of Atonement could be a good indicator of that it is in fact representing this very weekend. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it seems so relevant, because it had so many different elements that seem to point to a particular time. And this came out a while back. So that would indicate that whoever made this had some foreknowledge of this time. Because a lot of these, and just like a prophecy, nobody knew what this was until the lockdown started. So some of these things were kind of occultic and hidden until now. But again, here's this image, and I'll put this in the Discord if anybody wants it. It's a rarely rare image that I just ran across. But it conveys something that you don't really learn until you've been studying it for a while. Now, here's the other thing. This is Hebrew year 5781, also the year 2021. So what this guy's showing here is, this might be the Strong's interpretation, by the way. So if you put these numbers in, I think it just goes through the alphabet first, and then it builds on itself to create the Strong's Concordance. So if you go and just put in 1 and 2, it should be this, I think. So if you were to put 2 in front of 1, then it would be Beit Aleph, house of the ox, your house of the strong ox leader, which interpret that however you like. But in some respects, they do, Sumerians, for instance, refer to the Most High God as the Bull of Heaven, for instance. So that kind of does maybe make some sense in that context. And then we got another one right here, 5781. They use the 80 and the 1. So again, we got it left once more, but this time a different value, Pev. So this is the mouth, speak, scatter, ox strength leader. So again, remember when we were talking about the throat chakra and the blue thing and what that represented?
Lucifer.
Here we see again, this is the throat chakra here too, representing that same thing. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is or isn't or anything like that. I'm just pointing out things that get highlighted when I do research, and that's all. So I'm not trying to slander anybody's beliefs or practices. However, this stuff gets kind of undeniable when you really start to pay attention to all the things that get layered. So some type of voice thing seems to be prominent here. I'm going to say it's bad. Now, that said, here's the blowing of the shofar. During Teshuvah, usually on the day prior to Rosh Hashanah, so that would technically be today, because this is the Friday before the Sabbath day, right? So during Teshuvah, usually on the day prior to Rosh Hashanah, the shofar is blown. Now, the reason for that is Teshuvah means to give a cry, to give a shout, right? Well, you would shout the day before, because that's what the whole point of the two witnesses is to see that crescent shape in the moon and say, oh, it's time to blow the shofar, right? And so that's to Shuvah. This time it is blown with about 100 very short blasts, followed by one very long blast. So the very long blast is the one that most people are familiar with, because it's the most appealing sounding, I think. But then the congregation says, the gates of heaven are now open. So this tonight is supposed to represent that the gates of heaven are now open, right? This represents the blowing of the trump that raises the dead and raptures the believers. This occurs only when the gates of heaven are open. The ancient rabbis said that when you see the festival language, the opening of the gates, quote, in Scripture, it may be referring to the time of the resurrection. So that's why a lot of folks look forward to the Feast of the Trumpets, because, Christ still kept the feast days and stuff. He kept the law. So a lot of folks think that he would return on a feast day like that. And so that's why the twinkling of an eye reference and the marriage reference and all these things kind of point to the fall feast days, because he was sacrificed on the spring feast days, right? The Passover. So he should return on the fall feast days, and so as a bridegroom for his bride. So it really, why I suggest that we get in line with the feast days is because by doing so, it starts to really illuminate the texts and the parables, and we can kind of understand that. True, maybe we don't know the exact hour, but it does say that we should know the season. That we kind of, it's thief in the night language is really applicable to those that aren't watching. It says, but watch so that you aren't taken like a thief in the night. That's kind of why we're given the prophecies and stuff. Otherwise, there'd be no point in even giving us prophecies. It was just supposed to be thief in the night for everybody. Then nobody would just be told anything.
All right, true.
Okay, so to continue here, Rosh Hashanah, which this just means head of the year. So this is the new year for them, which is why we were talking about the values here. Okay. And they also have declared, of course they say this constantly. Well, normally they say they want Moshiach, meow. However, they're saying that the Moshiach will indeed manifest this year. So we should really keep our eye on the Hallett character, in my opinion.
Who is saying that?
Oh, another
Jews in
rabbi.
general? Oh, another rabbi. Okay.
I mean, I don't want to say that he's not important or whatever, but I don't know what makes him special. But
Okay.
they're saying it again.
Okay.
Open ye the gates, that the righteous nation which keepeth the truth may enter in. Lord, in trouble they have visited thee, and they have poured out a prayer when thy chastening was upon them, like a woman with child that draweth near the time of her delivery, is in pain and crieth out in her pangs. So have we been in thy sight, O Lord. We have been with child, we have been in pain, we have, as it were, brought forth wind, we have not yet wrought any deliverance in the earth, neither have the inhabitants of the world fallen. Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise, awake and sing. Again, a song of victory, a paean, perhaps. Ye that dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth shall also disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. Isaiah 26, 2, and then 16 through 21. That's why that seemed a little bit disjointed. There was a little bit of a splice there. Isaiah mentions the gates are open, which refers to Rosh Hashanah. The resurrection of the dead will occur on Yom HaDin, which is also called Rosh Hashanah. Din. I'm pretty sure din means destruction or something like that. I can't remember what it means particularly. So if somebody wanted to look that up, D-I-N, and that's it's an appointed time at the very least, like it says here. Okay. All right. So let's read a little bit about this. Just to give it full context, I want to read a little bit about the holiday within the context of the passage. So these were covenants made with Moses. Oh. Oh yeah, and if you were caught sleeping in the temple, I've read that the priest would put hot coals in your robe. Do things like that. People would run around with their robe on fire if they fell asleep.
I need to be more grateful for my life right now. Seriously, when you think about some of the things that it used to be like.
Oh, I know. Truly. I mean, we're rich in a lot of ways and poor in others, you know?
Amen.
All right, so let's read this here. The appointed festivals, the Muadim. Just like a dune. Sounds like Moadib. Verse 23 in Leviticus here. The Lord said to Moses, quote, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed festivals, the appointed festivals of the Lord, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies. The Sabbath. There are 6 days which you may work, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is Sabbath to the Lord." Just like today is, in fact, leading into the Day of Atonement, which is a special feast day. I think if it weren't to have occurred on a Sabbath by happenstance, you would be expected not to work on that day also. So double check me. I could be wrong. Maybe Day of Atonement is not until the another day, but I'm pretty sure it is tomorrow. But these Feast of Trumpets take place to mark the beginning of the holiday, and then I think the Day of Atonement might follow a day or two after, and then there's the Feast of Tabernacles after that. Well, what am I saying? Let's just read.
Okay.
The Passover and the Festival of Unleavened Bread. So this is talking about the spring ones. There are the Lord's appointed festivals and sacred assemblies that you are to proclaim at their appointed times. These are what the watchmen are all about. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight, again, the night time, on the 14th day of the first month. And on the 15th day of that month, the Lord's Festival of Unleavened Bread begins. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast, and on the first day hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days present a food offering to the Lord, and on the seventh day hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. So this is really a festival that's supposed to last for an entire week, right? And so that's why these traditions with the honey and the apples and all these things up, it's saying present a food offering to the Lord, right? So that's why these things are kind of commonplace in these festivals at this time, because these are the fruits of the harvest, if you will, right? So that's why if we practice these things, or at least learn about them, we're going to see why they're used so much to teach. Again, let's see here. Offering the first fruits, verse 9. I feel a sneeze coming on, folks.
That's okay.
Lord said to Moses, Ruach, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you, and you reap its harvest. Bring to the priest a sheaf. Blessings, man. Bring to the priest a sheaf of first grain you harvest. So here he's even instructing them, bring me your fruits, right? He is to wave the sheaf before the Lord so it can be accepted on your behalf. I'm sorry, guys. I've been sitting here with you. I don't even
Third time's a charm.
And have the priest wave it on the day of the Sabbath. Now, in the Masonic Lodge, there's a sheet as well, positioned at a certain point that represents this time, I think. On the day that you wave the sheaf, you must sacrifice a burnt offering to the Lord, a lamb of a year old without defect. Okay, we kind of see this trend with the red heifer almost. Together with its grain, offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil, a food offering presented to the Lord. That's like a little cake. A pleasing aroma, and its drink offering of a quarter of a hin of wine. So you should be offering wine and a little cake for this, right? And then it looks like a a lamb without any defect. So we see these things repeated in the Passover feast before the lamb was offered, right? So again, why these things are so important. The Last Supper was representative of this feast day. You must not eat any bread or roasted or new grain until the very day you bring this offering to your Lord. So he gets the first fruits, right? You're not supposed to get the first fruits. You give them to him. And this is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come wherever you live. So here he says this is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come wherever you live. So a lot of folks say, oh, we don't have to keep the feasts or whatever because, after Jesus came, he fulfilled everything and everything. Well, it's saying right here, it didn't say until the fulfillment of Christ, which is also part of prophecy. It clearly states right here, it wants you to keep the days because they're, an outstretch of the Sabbath, which is up here. I mean, it's a sacred, he made these days sacred for a reason. He wouldn't have done it to begin with if it wasn't important, So again, I think there's great wisdom in learning about the feast days because largely they're kind of overlooked in church. When I've went to church, I've never really heard them talk about.
I've never heard of them before.
I know,
in church.
and it's exactly what they should be talking about. If secondary to Jesus's teachings, but that's the thing. Jesus taught about these anyway. He just taught about them in parable form. So they're somewhat veiled in that regard. Sorry, I get a little excited. So we finished those first fruits. Now, the reason that this is so important is this ties back into the parable of the vineyard when the gardener is providing the first fruits to the base of the tree, right? And then at the third year, he's presenting the first fruits harvest to the Lord. And so this is where this is kind of highlighted later in other parts. The Festival of Weeks, verse 15. From the day after the Sabbath, the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, count off 7 full weeks. Count off 50 days. This is where we get Pentecost. Count out 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to the Lord. So what's 7 times 7? It's 49, right? And then that last day is 50. So from wherever you live, bring 2 loaves made of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour, baked with yeast, as a wave offering of first fruits to the Lord. Present with this bread 7 male lambs, each a year old and without defect, 1 young bull and 2 rams. I've also read that sometimes this was done to prevent lambs and goats and things like that from eating on the vine too, to prevent destruction in the vineyard. So sometimes it was done for that reason. So that could be a hidden reason is what I'm saying. The sacrifice of 1 male goat for a sin offering and 2 lambs, each a year old, for a fellowship offering. This is where we get the Day of Atonement part and the scapegoat ritual, okay? The priest is to wave the 2 lambs before the Lord as a wave offering together with the bread of the first fruits. They are a sacred offering to the Lord. And for the priest, on that same day, you are to proclaim a sacred assembly and do no regular work. Again, this is a Sabbath day, even if it's not Saturday. And this is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come wherever you live. But it does give us the day to do it. It indicates when we should start that. So this stuff is based on the moon. So the calendar, as we covered last week, is Sole Lunar, or however it was pronounced. It was a joining of the two, which is kind of like what the word Solomon means. It's sun and moon, right? So the calendar itself is solar in terms of year, but months are dictated by the moon, which is month is kind of where we get that from. Okay, so when you reap the harvest of your, verse 22, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you. I am the Lord your God. This is another reminder that this is the time when, you were talking about your blessings and stuff. If we got a lot of money saved up, share it with some folks. If you got a lot of food saved up, see if your neighbors, at the very least, hey, do you need some food? In our community, we have the blessing boxes that are kind of like the little libraries. It gives me the idea to go visit those and make sure they're stocked and have some food in them. So this is the time that we're supposed to be sharing our harvests with others. It's easy to see where this Thanksgiving tradition kind of came from, only that kind of came a little bit later in November. But this is the time we really should be celebrating Thanksgiving, having a thanksgiving to the Lord and celebrating. So if we were ever going to, if I were president, I would petition to get it moved to Rosh Hashanah, so that because imagine if the nation were truly in look at all the holidays that we have at large, right? If they were all kind of moved to the feast days instead, think of how pleasing that would be to the Lord.
Which is why you don't hear about them in church, because nobody wants you to know about them. And I'm not saying the church pastor is up there going, "Ooh, I don't want anyone to know."
Benefit.
I mean, he probably doesn't know, or she, whatever. He probably doesn't know, but yeah, if we were to able to start sharing this and celebrating them the way they're supposed to be, then we might even see bigger change than just our community prayers and our personal prayers and our our own personal purpose for the Lord to come together. That's why I was saying we should be praying against these things. There was something that you had posted in the Discord that I said we should be calling on all of us to pray against these things, because as hard as they work to create their occult plans and put all our holidays on pagan days, we could be working just as hard to reject all that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I like to talk about not the laws so much, but the commandments, because this is a commandment, to keep the feast days, because that's what brings us into the light of God. The menorah is a lamp full of oil, after all. So if we want to have oil in us too, we should do these things, because it talks about the blessings you get for just doing these things. So if you really get down to the deep bedrock of, well, how is this possible? Well, if you say you have faith and believe, then you have to believe that there's a spirit at work here too. And, just as well as these folks, like you're saying, they can do whatever they're doing to invoke some other spirit in God. Well, they're likely getting results from doing that, but they're doing things in a particular manner. God's telling us right here, if you want the Holy Spirit, here's what I want you to do. And your home will be blessed, So we'll get into that a little bit here. So the Day of Atonement, he's talking about this. The Lord said to Moses, the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. Hold a sacred assembly and deny yourselves and present a food offering to the Lord. I think the word here, instead of deny, is afflict. Afflict your soul, for instance. Do not work on that. Do not do any work on that day, because it is a day of atonement, when atonement is to be made for you before the Lord your God. This is a day between you and God. Those who do not deny themselves on that day will be cut off from the people. I will destroy you from among the people. Anyone who does any work on that day, folks, this tomorrow of all days, do not work, it says. You shall do no work at all. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. Even on the moon, I would assume you still got to pay attention to it, although it'd be really tricky to know when the holiday started if you were on the moon.
Which is why you wouldn't be on the moon. It's not a place you could go.
Oh, well, I keep forgetting who I'm talking to. It is a day of Sabbath rest for you, and you must deny yourselves from the evening of the 9th day to the month until the following evening you are to observe your Sabbath. So, in other words, it's night to night, from the evening to the evening. So again, in the twinkling of an eye refers to the evening. arrival of the bridegroom. So if the bridegroom's keeping the feast days, then he's gonna have stuff to do, right? So he's gonna tarry because he's got to get this and that. I got to get the lamb and the oil, and I mean, can you imagine? The grocery list and stuff kind of thing going on. I mean, he's got a lot of business to attend to, so he's got a lot of things in his mind. He might be a little bit late, right? But we're to be ready and to have our lamps filled with oil, right? So that's when this is really kind of getting into the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. Okay, so let's get into the Festival of Tabernacles here. The Lord said unto Moses, verse 33, say to the Israelites, on the 15th day of the 7th month, and the Lord's Festival of Tabernacles begins, and it lasts for 7 days. The first day is a sacred assembly, do no regular work. So again, we see this repeating pattern here. For 7 days, present food offerings to the Lord. And on the 8th day, beyond a week's time, hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to the Lord. It is a closing special assembly, do no regular work. So he's telling you several times not to work. That's a very easy commandment to fulfill, I think, right?
I would say so if I understood like the definition of work, which unfortunately when they got into it, they had too many rules. Like you can't travel 23 feet from your house or whatever. You can only travel like a rope's length away. But anyway.
Oh, that sounds a little bit. That's an echo of the lockdown, isn't it?
Yeah. So the Hebrews or Jews having had all these extra laws that they wrote on that. I mean, how would you tell us simply because right now we're celebrating the Sabbath, but you said you like doing this because this is on the Sabbath, but this is not work. What is work?
Oh, yeah. So anyway, if you look into it, it's apparently servile work. Now, there might even be a distinction here with the Day of Atonement. I think the Day of Atonement actually makes a distinction in the rest, or like the work. I will destroy you from among people who does not do. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is just a different version I must be reading, but I'm pretty sure that this right here is servile work. So like if you worked for somebody, or it was some type of I don't want to say slave labor, but if you had like a boss or something that you're not supposed to work for somebody else, in other words. So that's what you're supposed to avoid on this day, because you can't serve two masters, right? Like, so this is the day for the Lord. So you reserve that day for the Lord. In other words, it's not for your job to do, like, you shouldn't be making money on this day, right? In other words, just think of it that way, I guess. Now, we've seen in other examples, is it wrong to help your neighbor on the Sabbath? Well, Jesus says no. So if his animal got out of the fence or something, you were expected to still help. And that's not supposed to be considered work either, because you're doing good. And see, this is where the Pharisees and Sadducees really, this is the point he was trying to make, is if you're trying to keep the law to the point that you're doing evil inadvertently because you're not helping somebody, well, maybe nothing catastrophic, terrible would happen. But losing an animal, I mean, if you're already keeping the feast days and stuff, and it's like you're already giving up 7 of them, and then here's another one wandering out, well, I should probably go help that guy out. I mean, that's quite a few animals to be losing for nothing. But should I not do anything because I'm trying to keep the commandment? So that was the point Jesus was trying to make. Sorry for going on ever long, but I wanted to make that distinction because you do.
Well, I asked the question.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess you did.
Yeah. Whoa.
I just get on rambling.
If I ask a question, I like an answer. I think it's a good thing because it has me thinking. Because I agreed to work. I mean, I say that, but
you shouldn't.
I agreed to help. Hold on, I agreed to help my landlord tomorrow paint, an apartment, and I'm like, is this going to be considered work? Well, part of it's kind of charitable.
As long as you don't accept payment for it, you should be fine. Or just have him pay you
tomorrow I
gotta
work for free
or something like that.
Okay.
Because see, there's a beautiful thing about it is if you were to say that, and then he might look at you puzzled and be like, well, why is that? And you can be like, and that could be an opportunity to witness to him and be like, well, today's the Day of Atonement, and we really shouldn't be doing work for money. So, if it's all the same to you, see, there you had an opportunity to witness. So that's why
luckily he's a God-fearing man, and these are conversations we already have, so that could actually be fun.
Exactly. And see, that's the point. Like, you don't know what could come from that. So, so just,
good point.
Just keep money out of it is my advice.
Good idea.
Don't work for the man. Work for the man upstairs tomorrow.
Well, when I say my landlord, he's a longtime friend, and he's also a really strong Christian. He just to give you, not that I'm not trying to excuse me working for him. He's a great man, and I want to give him props because I've known him for 20 years or more, maybe a little more. And what he does is he rebuilds. He buys and rebuilds and also builds from scratch homes in a bad part of town. And his purpose is to try to bring the word of the Lord to people. And he runs a Bible study and he invites all his tenants. He has 200 places that he has rented out, and yet only 3 of us show up to Bible study on Monday nights. It's just so sad. And he deals with, some of the worst of the worst, because he says his rental agreement is, if you promise to pay rent, I will rent to you. And of course he does background checks, but that means he's renting to people who are fresh out of prison or trying to kick drugs, or a mom on drugs that has 2 kids, but if she promises to pay rent, he'll give her a place to live. I mean, it's something else.
Especially in these times. Something else. So, I mean, I get it, man. You're not going to hear any criticisms from me. But, like I said, it's an opportunity to witness. So just remember that.
And this would
don't
be a new topic.
So caught up in trying to keep every jot and tittle of the law that you end up sinning. That was like the point he was trying to make.
Good point. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the clarification. I'm glad you asked.
And because the Spirit's not with them yet still, that's still their mode of thinking, for those that deny Christ. They would, if they are an observant, Jew, as it were, they would maybe still keep the holiday and still deny Christ. Well, it'd be kind of funny, in that way. This is the point he was trying to make. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites on the 15th day. Oh, I already did this part. Oh, okay. Let's just start with 37. Quote, these are the Lord's appointed festivals, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for bringing food offerings to the Lord, the burnt offerings and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings required for each day. These offerings are in addition to those for the Lord's Sabbaths. See, that's a very good indication right here that there's a distinction made. These offerings are in addition to those for the Lord's Sabbaths, and in addition to your gifts and whatever you have vowed, and all the free will offerings you give to the Lord. So what he's saying is, this is a special day, special time. The Feast of Tabernacles lasts 7 days even. So this is a time where you want to be seeking out opportunities to do good. You want to be seeking out ways to give, fruits to the Lord. Fruits are also, a lot of folks say that the mark of the beast associated with right hand is axe. The axe you do with your right hand. Well, if that's in fact true, well then what are your deeds good fruits? Are you exercising your fruits and sharing them? So that's a good way to look at it here, and see, until you start getting in line with these feast days and studying them, that interpretation doesn't really make sense until now you look at this and you're like, oh, okay, well, if it's the Day of Atonement, judgment's coming. It's like, you might be doing some good stuff. He's giving you an opportunity here to try and make up for it. Now, we obviously see that Jesus died for our sins, so this is kind of an obsolescent thing in that regard. However, we can still do fruits because faith without, works without faith is dead, right? So if we want to be a proper fruiting tree, proper fruiting vine, we can't just have faith, and we can't just do works. We have to do works of faith. So, for instance, going and painting and doing it for money, for instance, would maybe be on one end, but then going and doing it and witnessing, well, that's now we're doing that's a that's a faithful fruit thing, right? An act of faith. So that's one way to think of it, is like we got to give glory to God and think of all these opportunities where we can go out of our way to help somebody. But just be sure, tell them, be like, hey, praise God, I love God so much, and let them know why you're doing it, you know. And it might freak them out or something, who knows. But but that's the point. It's a seed that you've planted, and that's why it's so critical to have that hunger for the word of God and that water, because you know it says, woe unto those who are, you know, with child in those days, those are who are travailing, right? We're keep seeing this travailing theme. You know, the birth pangs come on suddenly. You know, when you got to have a child suddenly, I mean, we maybe don't think about it so a little differently now, right? But think about the back in the day. You know, you want to make sure you're in a very safe place before that happens, right? So, are you going to be traveling? You know, if you think that that's an imminent event, you're going to try and make sure you're in a safe place. Well, think of the feeling that would come upon a mother if she were with a child and then caught unaware, or if you have a dragon seeking to devour your child, right? So, I get a little off topic there. So I just wanted
okay. We're all listening and enjoying.
Get back on track here. So, the beginning of the 15th day in the 7th month, and you shall have gathered the crops of the land and celebrate the festival of the Lord 7 days, and the first day is the day of Sabbath, and the 8th day is also a Sabbath rest. And it says here in verse 40, on the first day you are to take branches from the luxuriant trees, from palms, willows, and other leafy trees, and rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. Now, I've heard one guy saying how he tries to fulfill the feasts in his own way because he doesn't have these trees around him. He substituted his own native trees, branches, to do this. And so, again, because you can't fulfill it exactly, I think if you just still try to do it, I mean, you don't know that the Spirit's not out there watching you do that. And if it sees you doing all this, you might feel a little bit silly, but hey, we're going to get into it might talk about it here, but it points out in other parts of the Bible that you're actually given blessings for doing these things. Celebrate this as a festival to the Lord for 7 days each year. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. I mean, how many times has he said that? Celebrate it in the 7th month. I think that's what we're in right now. So that's why this is talking about this. Live in temporary shelters. See, here's another one. That's just very profound. Live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so that your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Go camping, right?
Yeah, or also refuge places,
Yeah.
places of refuge. But
Go
yeah,
to the hills. When the abomination of desolation
camping
occurs,
is good.
you better start going to your temporary shelter. And so, what was the first tabernacle? It was also a tent, right? Are you there?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. It was a big tent.
So, you know, I think this stuff, and again, just because we took the time to read this, first time I've ever read it, I felt inspired to read about the feast days, you know, and there's a lot of wisdom hidden in these things. So, anyway, I had a couple more topics here to touch on, and I'll try not to be ever long, but these things are interesting, and so I want to get into them a little bit. But they might break away from what we were talking about hard. So let me make sure let me talk about something a little more relevant first before we venture too far. Oh, there it is. There's the lady. So the not young one, not old one, but the middle-aged one. She's got a tiger on her back that I didn't get a still shot of, which a lot of folks think that this represents like an Angelina Jolie type of character that's an activist, and because she's got a tiger tattoo on her back, and the skeleton death type figure comes up behind her and places his hand upon her shoulder suddenly, and she gets this look of defeat on her, which she's waving a white flag, but notice here also she's got red shoes on. Now, I didn't get a really close picture of it, but that's clearly red. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, very much so.
So I'm not sure if it's representative of anything, but anyway, this was a yin and yang with the shadow and light, but then it merges into just white light, which she's standing in a spotlight when this occurs, and the skeleton comes up and tags her. And this is the only one with a yellow light on it. All the others have red, so I'm not sure what that's all about. This could be the light from that, if that's the case. So maybe she was hidden until she was in the light of this. Yeah, that makes sense. So this thing must shoot her. That's the skeleton touching her. I see. That makes a little bit more sense now. It's not so. I'm sure there's probably another version of this with some added frames, and so they jump around a lot. So you almost have to interpret what's going on. But sorry, that's for later. Okay, so this is the next thing I wanted to read real quick before it becomes irrelevant. Since we're still in this time, sort of, I wanted to mention that we could be seeing the meteors shower here that's going to occur as the Draconids. That's a dragon. So we see in Revelation when it's citing this September 23rd, 2017 type thing. And we see that Jared Kushner keeps making this reference to, let me see, it was 3.5 years. He kept saying, I had that up here somewhere. Yeah, it's probably back here somewhere. But the reason that I wanted to focus on that is that's the second time that he's used that language, 3.5 years. Remember, that's in Revelation 12. Talks about the period of 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. So that puts us at about March is what it'll be. And so right here, the dragon tail throwing stars down, right? This could be the one that it's talking about. That's why I wanted to mention it. So the Draconids is a minor meteor shower. It's minor. So if it's a little more than minor, it could be an indicator. But 12 meteors per hour is produced by dust grains left behind by Comet 21P Giacobini-Zinner, which was first discovered in 1900. The Draconids is an unusual shower, and that the best viewing is in the early evening instead of early morning like most other showers. The shower runs annually from October 6th through 10th and peaks this year on the night of the 7th. The second quarter moon will ensure dark skies in the early evening for what should be a good show. Best viewing will be in the early evening from a dark location far away from the city lights. Meteors will radiate from the constellation Draco, but can appear anywhere in the sky. So, not that there's any hard connections here, but I just think that it's interesting how they mention that it's best to go far away from town, right? So got to remember that these stories are, created and told by shepherds and people that are living in their temporary shelters, camping. And so they're out under the stars, away from the cities. They're telling stories to one another and keeping this thing going, And part of the story is that after these feasts and the woman in the sky, right, this dragon comes casting down the third of the stars in heaven, right? So this is an interesting thing to have happen right after these feast days. So I just think it's something to pay attention to, because maybe one day this one's a lot worse than it usually is. So I don't know. That could be why it's mentioned. Because the Revelation 12:1 sign only happens like every 5,000 years. So, it could indicate that this only gets bad every so often as well. But it says here that it's actually a remnants of a comet. So not, in fact, the Oort belt. There's an Oort cloud asteroid belt as well. So it's saying that it's not from that unless, of course, this comet originates from that, which is entirely possible as well. So,
not in my mind, but yes.
Oh yeah. I keep forgetting about that. But anyway, always got to assume that's the lens I'm using here. But this says that it'll emanate from Draco. So that particular zodiac sign is over by Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, and Scorpio, and the scales. So I didn't have time to throw it all together, but we'll do it next week. There are a lot of these signs associated with Saturn, including the September 23rd, 2017 sign. A lot of times people took the pictures of it. They never incorporated Saturn that's off to the far left, over by Draco and at the foot of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. And that is also there when Trump was born. It was there when he got inaugurated. And then it was there again on the 23rd of September, 2017. And it's going to, I think it's going to be there again, soon, very soon. And then there's the conjunction is going to occur December 21st with Jupiter and Saturn. But Saturn is actually going to be sitting in retrograde for a little bit, and then accompanying Jupiter. So it's going to kind of appear to almost sit still in the sky for a minute.
Explain to me as a glober, what the heck does that even mean? Like, what does it mean for something to be in retrograde and to just appear like it's sitting still? What's actually supposedly happening?
Oh, see, that's a great question, because so retrograde would mean that, so these orbits of these fictitious things called planets, right, that are hurtling.
No, they're real. They're just not exactly what I think people say they are.
Well, as a compromise, we could even say that the Earth's flat in this dome, but that yet all this is still occurring outside of the
yes,
dome.
They are there and they are real.
Give me that. Okay. All right. So that said, these orbits are occurring in an elliptical fashion, and so they're not perfect circles. And so a lot of this would be said to be due to the sun, and because of the sun's vast amount of gravity, there's a great pull on them, and so as they slingshot around the sun, they're hurled out into space, but at some point they lose their terminal velocity, just like you would be throwing a baseball or a softball up into the air with an arc on it. Your arm represent the sun, right? And then you throwing that ball up into the air in an arc would be the force of that orbit. So if it's a bowling ball, that's a dense planet in that regard, and it's not going to get very far, right? So I think that's why a planet like Earth, for instance, would be closer, is because it is more dense. We don't see, a lot of planets that are further out in this model are gaseous giants, right? Because the further they are out, the more they expand, just because they don't have hard matter so much. And so when they're in retrograde, that would mean that their orbit is going away from us, right? So how we would refer to this is, we'd say, depending on how the Earth was looking at this planet from a perspective means, the constellations themselves are just distant stars by which we can use as a backdrop to reference the more terrestrial planets in our neighborhood of the solar system. So since the stars themselves don't move, the planets do, we can use constellations to reference their movements. And so that's why in Revelation 12:1,
The stars don't move? Oh, this is great. I'm glad we agree on something.
yeah,
We don't have an ever-expanding
well, they
universe.
say that there's some that are like binary that might revolve around one another, and that could even be the case with Nibiru and our sun, if that's true as well. So, and I think that that's highly likely because that could be the destroyer and a lot of other things, and wormwood, and it could explain a lot, actually. But until it happens, that's just one of those things we can't prove until it happens. Because the point is, nothing survives on the Earth when this happens. So that's why we don't really know exactly. And I think that's why there's so many hard stops in civilization, is because it only gets to a certain point and then it's completely reset. Or like these harvests occur with God's being like, all right, I'm ready to come and harvest my people, and he comes and harvests. So I think that there could have been, like the Machu Picchu people just vanished too, makes you wonder. So it could have been like these rapture events could occur before these catastrophic events occur. So that's what these things, these stories seem to suggest, is that there's a great and terrible thing that comes to destroy the entire earth. And so they preserve this story best they can in this way. And so salvation is extended to these people that heed the God's word, the creator. And that's kind of how I see these star stories. And so the retrograde is very important in the context of Revelation 12, because Jupiter would normally only spend about 4.5 months inside of Virgo, but because it's in retrograde, it'll spend 4.5 months, and then in retrograde, it stays in Virgo instead of moving outside of the constellation. It's actually moving in an elliptical fashion while still being in Virgo. So that's what makes some of these constellations, in reference to the planets moving, so important, is because normally they would be traversing the constellations and moving through them. But at the apogee of their orbit, which is the furthest point, that's why they appear to kind of sit still, is because at the point where that ball hits the top of that arc, for a brief moment in time, if you were to capture that with a series of photographs, there's a point in time where it appears stationary, but then it falls back. And then if you were to catch it and throw it back up, that would be like the equivalent of it catching that orbit and going back up. So each planet has its own orbit around the sun, as it were, in this model. And, so Saturn, in this case, from the perspective of Earth, Jupiter, rather. So Jupiter, from the perspective of Earth, would have been in Virgo for 4.5 months, traveling, stayed in her belly then for a period of 9 months instead of just 4.5 like it would have normally done. So that's just one part of that sign, which that happens. That's not irregular. And any one of those things, they all happen, but for them all to happen at the same time on the same day, that's what made that very significant. So I know I go on and harp about Revelation 12, but it's really significant because it just happened a few years ago, and the 3.5 years type language makes now highly significant. So I'm not trying to alarm people, but if the
we're not alarmed, because if Jesus is coming, then we are supposed to rejoice and look forward with the hope and excitement that he would be coming.
But,
this is not scary.
I know.
This is good for us.
I just feel less crazy day by day, to be honest.
if it doesn't happen, then that's fine too, because he's also long suffering, and we can pray for more time, which I have done. Doesn't mean I get to get it, but he is long suffering. Oh, that's the image of the phallus on the I-Pet-Goat. It's lovely. Continue.
Oh, you saw a phallus. See, I didn't see a phallus.
I see a leg and a phallus.
Well, okay, so this is where that
that looks like a leg, does it not?
And
a body laying down. I know, that's where the old lady lives.
Is this where she's at?
That is where she lives. It's definitely a phallus. It's definitely a leg and a body laying down. I mean, it really looks like that to me. But
Interesting.
maybe it's not just my viewpoint. Okay, I will admit that I got that also from Jonathan Kleck, who is a questionable dude. But I see it like it's all I can see now. Maybe I shouldn't
No, I mean
have
I can
listened to him,
kind of
but it's
see
like
it.
it's very
I
it
guess
seems
I
pretty
can see what you
phallic.
mean, and you're probably right. I'm sure. Anyway, what I was trying to capture was this. If you notice, this is the hand of God. Now, I've read a few things on like the DC comic universe, for instance. On occasion, I'll read that stuff, and they talk about in terms of the Abrahamic God. They actually incorporate parts of that into their DC universe. Interestingly enough, and they've broken them down into a few different things. One is they just call it the presence. That's what they refer to God as. And so it's not often that God will intervene in earthly affairs. And, but when it does, when God does do this, it has the voice and then also the hand of God. And so these things would occur at only at appointed times, so when God's word says, well, this is going to happen, and it's like, well, all right, for thousands of years, people are like, oh, nothing's going to happen. Well, then it's like, well, when God decides to show up, it's in ways like this that, like are totally undeniable and huge. And so the voice and things in the sky and things like that. So I know Project Bluebeam, of course, could be a possible explanation for something like this, but this is also an archetype used, and so this is also popular in tarot cards. The ace, this would be the ace of cups or swords or wands or whatever, is to represent a blessing or a sign from God. So in this case, he's doing something to that, and it gave that woman, like, how we done with was it Rebecca, who was barren and couldn't have children?
Well, she's one of many.
But well, yeah, but I was just making sure I got the name right. So it would be an example of that kind of thing. I didn't mean to show that, but it just come across it. So.
It's kind of hard not to see once you see it, right?
I lost. Yeah, obviously. But the point of that is that also in that tower are those dancers. That Nataraja is occurring in there as well, and so it's really the. I mean, it's got some deep occultic references to like the beasts, I think, also, because if you notice, there was one of the water, which was the frog, and then there was one of a bear that I think represent like one of the earth. And then at the end of those sequences, he does another mask that looks like a man. And, it's said in some of the things I've read that the throne of God is protected by a few different castes of angels, all with different abilities and things like that. And one would be there's like the bull type creatures, then there's the bird type, and then there's the type that looks like lions, and then there's the type that looks like man. And that like God's chariot, his throne, is like powered by these seraphim, cherubim, angel type creatures. So I think the time Isaiah discusses having seen God appear to him over Babylon, I think that description would probably match that in the way I'm trying to explain. Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. The image on the screen, that was just like a screensaver thing I was going to have up. But some people were trying to say that this was one of those Neuralink things, that Trump got a Neuralink jack already. And I was thinking, like, you never know, man. Like, we could really be dealing with that, if you think about it.
Well, I think Elon Musk has expressed support for him in the past, so that could be.
All right.
I thought you were going to compare it to that flag, because you showed that picture and it looked like this white piece in his hair, and then you went back to the white flag, and I was like, oh, is that supposed to look like the white flag?
I bet it's probably for his hair, But at this point, I wouldn't let anything surprise me because I think is that where it goes actually? Isn't that where
I have no idea.
can't remember if
I mean, I could not
it
look at this
goes.
picture and go, "That's Neuralink." I wouldn't.
Oh yeah,
Wouldn't even be
obviously, but
sure.
I can't remember where they go. That would be one way to kind of
Be a
figure it
good thing
out.
to try to find out.
He'd probably admit to having a Neuralink before he'd
But
admit to having ear
he wouldn't be
implants.
a test subject. They'd have to test. They'd have to test it on the minorities first, right? Just like the vaccines.
Yeah, Bill and Melinda Gates said as much. All right, so here's one more thing I wanted to cover real quick before I get into this other thing. Zuckerberg. I think you've covered this. I've even researched this in the past. Have you ever heard of the Cannibal Club?
Yes, gross.
Yeah, obviously. But here's the thing. Did you know that Raven Chan was actually related to this Zuckerberg guy and his wife?
Well, she's related to his wife, yeah.
So, yeah, I just found that absolutely appalling. I mean, I did not know that. So, I mean, this is truly horrifying.
Yep.
Yeah, here's the original post. So I'm surprised that's even allowed on social media. But yeah. And let's see here. I had a couple things here to show. The lunar.
This is just them making this all normal and okay and nothing to see here.
So this is the Lurianic Kabbalah. I'm going to read this little excerpt here first and then show you guys a little bit more of what's going on. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I keep forgetting about the chat. There you go, guys. Now, the reason this is so important is I think that the Hallett character, Joseph Gregory Hallett, I think that we're starting to get into the realm of what he's up to with this stuff here because they start talking about Messiah ben David and Messiah ben Joseph. And remember, he was making mention of two Jesuses. This is what he's talking about, this kind of thing right here. So anyway, let me read this. And there's more to expand on that. In Lurianic Kabbalah, Adam incorporated all souls. It is possible for different soul sections to be given to different people. In addition, multiple people can share the same soul root. In the Kabbalistic understanding, the righteous priest would be reincarnated as Abel, Seth, Noah, and Shem. Moses, and like Adam, also incorporated all souls. Messiah ben Joseph was incarnated as Cain. He was notably reincarnated as Joseph, son of Jacob, and Jeroboam. Messiah ben David was incarnated as Abel and David. Most of Messiah ben Joseph claimants have been Kabbalists or made by Kabbalists. In the Kabbalistic understanding, this does not necessarily mean a literal claim of messiahship is being made. Now, if you notice there, they didn't list Jesus as one of the Messiah ben David characters, but he would have been one of them as well. But what I find interesting is it talks about Messiah ben Joseph incarnated as Cain. So it's saying that there's these like archetypes that get repeated, so it seems, which seems to be a popular idea with some people as they talk about like the return of the two witnesses, for instance, and they say, oh, it's Elijah or an Elijah type or something like that. So that's the only way I can relate it to us in a relevant way. But anyway, let me see what else it was I was going to add here. But as you can see, this could be part of that false Christs thing, is that you got all these different claimants trying to say that they're the Christ. And this is exactly what Joseph Gregory Hallett is doing. So
also, David Icke should be added to that list because he said as much himself.
So, I just wanted to mention this because this is so strange and I've never heard of this. 10 lost tribes. I didn't get a chance to read this in full detail earlier. So throughout the Hebrew Bible, Ephraim is often used to refer collectively to the northern kingdom. Ephraim was the leading tribe in the north. It has been claimed that Messiah ben Joseph does not represent the leader of the 10 lost tribes, and that he is never presented as such. Rather, he is presented as the leader of all of Israel. However, some later Jewish sources do explicitly call the Messiah ben Joseph the leader of the 10 lost tribes. Mikveh Israel was written by the 17th century Kabbalist Manasseh ben Israel. The text deals at some length with the author's theory that the parts of the 10 tribes can be found among the Native Americans. I've heard that a lot, actually. In the next text, the author calls the Messiah ben Joseph the future leader of the 10 lost tribes. Well, that's interesting, because I've honestly heard some mentions in prophecy of red man being mentioned. So they could, in fact, be referring to Native Americans. In this commentary on Ezekiel 3:37, the Malbium also says that the Messiah ben Joseph will be the leader of the 10 lost tribes when they return. So this is Isaiah 11 is one example of that. Gathering of the remnant, the 144,000, as it were. The first fruits, again, in line with the feast days. We see that highlighted. The Messiah ben Joseph will initiate union with Judah, who will be led by Messiah ben David. Later, the Messiah ben Joseph is killed, and Messiah ben David will rule over the 12 tribes. Guys, I got to tell you, sorry, man, this is crazy. Something just hit me here. I don't have the link up
Tell us.
to share you. Did I share this in the chat yet? The Lunar Kabbalah link?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, so this Messiah ben Joseph character is going to initiate union with Judah. What did we just see happen is the Abraham Accord, right? And it's known that the Antichrist figure, right, confirms a covenant already made. So this would almost really disqualify Trump from being this character altogether, even if he's doing the work on purpose for the guy to come. He wouldn't be him, because the person that's coming is going to be this Mark of the Cain guy. This Ben Joseph Messiah is going to come and initiate a union with Judah. He's going to confirm that covenant, and then he will be led and then by the Messiah ben David person is going to be leading them. And then it says here, and then this Joseph guy's killed by the Messiah ben David that will then rule over the 12 tribes. So this Messiah ben David character is actually mentioned in Isaiah 11, this root of Jesse, root of David character that comes up and leads the remnant, right? And then this Messiah ben Joseph character is killed. This is the scapegoat. And this is the other one. Yeah. Now see where I came across this. There's an ancient Sumerian king, and I have the link. I'll look for it if I can manage to look for it as I'm talking about it. I'll do my best to find it. So what's interesting about this Sumerian tale is that there's a story that I'll read to you guys here in a moment that it mirrors this exactly. And what it is, this king knew that he was part of some prophecy that he was supposed to die. And so what he does is he gets his servant to basically be king for a day. And this is exactly how it talks about in Revelation, right? With the Antichrist will be given authority to rule for a certain period of time, but then is killed. and then the 1,000-year reign occurs. So it's almost as if the Antichrist type figure comes to do the dirty work that the Savior shouldn't or couldn't do, but is done for the purpose of God's plan, right? So I'm just saying that's my interpretation, but that's what I think, is that it's possible that that's why God allows the Antichrist to manifest, is for the purposes of judgment, which would match this archetype. They equate Satan with Samael, which is known as the poison of God. So it would seem like Samael, meaning he was like God, I think. So this character that is like God would be the poison of God, and then, of course, would lead to punishment, right? And would be the scapegoat. So this same character would be like synonymous with your Azazel type figure. So this is very, very interesting. So it's your goat as opposed to your lamb, is really what it boils down to. But as we see in the feasts, as of we just read a little bit ago, those are used in these feasts coming up. Man, how interesting. So that's why I wanted to kind of read about this stuff, because it's a little bit outside what we would normally focus on.
Bless you. It's not, though, because somebody was asking about the feast and something I was watching. Yeah. And forgive me if I forget, it might have been BDK's Omega Frequencies, or it might have been, bless you, Airborne Saint. But anyway, somebody was asking about the feast, and I said, well, we're discussing that on Friday night. So it's really good that we're talking about so much that I'm not sure some people are talking about, of course, but I hadn't heard about before you wanted to talk about it with me, so I'm super grateful.
I know, and it's so timely, right? So I'm still looking for the link, but couldn't stop sneezing. Okay, so there's one more, or maybe there's a couple more things here to read. Oh yeah, and I mentioned Zechariah to cite some of this stuff. So Zechariah 12 is where we can find a little bit more about this. Okay, so it's talking about the second temple getting destroyed and stuff, and him going through the gate. Okay, so the Talmud here. In Jerusalem, the Talmud, Arab tells a Jew that the Messiah is born. His father's name is Hezekiah, and he will be named Menahem. He is not referred to as Messiah ben Joseph. However, some have linked this passage to Messiah ben Joseph selling his cow and plow. He buys some swaddling cloth and travels from town to town. That's like a sackcloth. He travels to Bethlehem, where the child is born. All the women are buying their children clothing except Menahem's mother. She says her son is an enemy of Israel because he is born on that day. The second temple was destroyed. The day of desolation, perhaps, would be son of perdition. That might be what that means. He tells her that if she does not have the money today, she can pay later. He says that the child is surely the Messiah who will rebuild the temple. When he returns, she tells him that Menahem has been carried by some divine wind up to heaven. He will later return as Israel's Messiah. That's really interesting. So, I mean, the Talmud's got some stuff I've never even heard, presented.
I would bet.
So that's just a really weird story. Let's see. I think there was one more here. Yeah, this one about Gabriel's revelation. Gabriel's revelation is a stone tablet within its text in ink. Although the inscription is in poor state of preservation, the meaning of the legible text is still a matter of scholarship. The text seems to talk about a messianic figure from Ephraim who will break evil before righteousness by 3 days. Latter, the text talks about a prince of princes, a leader of Israel who's killed by the evil king and not properly buried. Again, there's a story about Sisyphus that came back because he wasn't properly buried. but he was a king that defied the gods. The evil king is then miraculously defeated. The text seems to refer to Jeremiah chapter 21. That's a really good one to be reading right now because that deals a lot with atonement and the judgments. And also Joel. The choice of Ephraim as the lineage of the messianic figure described in the text seems to draw on passages in Jeremiah, Zechariah, and Hosea. However, Matthias Henze suggests that this figure is not a reference to the Messiah ben Joseph, who he believes is a latter development, but rather a pseudonym for the Messiah ben David, and that Ephraim is simply a metonym in reference to Israel, which I've heard that too, that Ephraim and Manasseh, Manasseh's the northern, Ephraim's the northern, Manasseh's the south, or Judah and Ephraim rather. But Manasseh and Judah were the two tribes that weren't scattered, I think, is what I was trying to say. Okay, so the text seems...
Hey, real quick, I just want to give a shout out to World Bigfoot Radio. Thanks for being here. I'm so sorry that you're in Missoula, but I hope you're holding up okay out there. Just want to say that real quick, and back to you, Mr. NPC 3.14.
It's cool, man. Okay, so sorry, I didn't preview this so much before I started on it, but it was new and relevant, so I wanted to share it. Oh, and here's the other one. This is what I was actually looking for. Jewish tradition alludes to four messianic figures called the four craftsmen. This reminded me of like the horsemen in a sense. From a vision found in the book of Zechariah, Hebrew text 2:1-4, traditional English text 1:27. The four craftsmen are discussed in Babylonian Talmud Suk. Rav Hana bar Bizna, attributed to Rav Samian Hasidah, identifies these four craftsmen as Messiah ben David, Messiah ben Joseph, Elijah, and the righteous priest. Each will be involved in ushering in the Messianic age. They are mentioned in the Talmud and the book of Zechariah. And let's just continue here. Rashi, in his commentary on the Talmud, gives more details. Rashi explains that the Messiah ben Joseph is called a craftsman because he will help rebuild the temple. Namanid, excuse me, Naman Naid.
You're gonna have to brush up on your
Well, I'm
Hebrew.
trying. I can't breathe because of the sneezing and everything, so I'm dying here. Also commented on the Messiah ben Joseph's rebuilding of the temple. The roles of the four craftsmen are as follows. Elijah will be the herald of the eschaton, concerned with the events that will happen in the end of days. So remember when we're talking about Jezebel's spirit a couple weeks ago? This is why this association with Elijah is he comes to judge the whore of Babylon, as it were. See, the dispensation of justice, this figure here is a judge, basically. He makes the way for this Messiah ben David figure, I would assume. If necessary, the Messiah ben Joseph will wage war. Yeah. So the Messiah ben Joseph, he's the warlike one. He wages war against the evil forces and dies in combat with the enemies of God in Israel. He's like a sacrificial goat, scapegoat, if you will, but brings great destruction. And according to the Sadia Gaon, the need for his appearance will depend on the spiritual condition of the Jewish people. So again, the atonement, it depends on the spiritual condition of the Jewish people. Again, the restrainer, these concepts of the restrainer and whether or not a generation 70 or 80 years, these types of things kind of come into play with that, I think. And the Sefer Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel, that's Solomon's son, I believe. And later writings, after his death, a period of great calamities will befall Israel.
God will then resurrect the dead and usher in the Messianic era of universal peace. Messiah ben David will reign as a Jewish king during this period when God will resurrect the dead. This is that 1,000-year period with this Messiah ben David figure. With the ascendancy of the rabbinic Judaism, the righteous priest, this is another, actually wanted to read that. I forgot to bring that one up. Has largely not been the subject of the Jewish messianic speculation. This is a very interesting topic. If you don't mind, we can cover that real quick. So this is referring to this.
Real quick.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Just joking.
No,
I love it.
I knew this was gonna be challenging to get all this in.
And I agree. We're going on 3 hours. I get to have a little fun with you. Go ahead, real quickly.
So the last thing will be the next. Well, actually, I got
it's good.
Our website.
This is good. Don't let me messing with you mess it up. Just keep going.
So anyway, this is that 1,000-year period in Revelation, and so Revelation 8 is kind of where this is starting, and that Paeon army song of valor and victory that's taught to the 144,000 kind of goes right on with this too. So where we see this Apollyon character over the pit, in my opinion, represents this Messiah ben Joseph character that wages war, and that's why he can't harm those who have the mark of God on their foreheads, because he too is a servant of the Most High in all manner speaking, but just can't harm the true believers. But he gets to harm plenty of others, So he gets what he wants in that sense. But then we got this character here that leads in the millennial reign when the dead have been risen and such. So I find this very illuminating. But I've never heard of these characters until he was bringing up the two Jesuses, and it's really just what we think of as the Jesus and the Antichrist, without that distinction really being made. And when somebody refers to the two Jesuses, I think that's what they're really referring to. It's a tad bit deceptive in that regard. But I don't know if they're trying to be deceptive or not, but that's the clarification I think that needed to be made. And now I think I understand it a little bit better, but it's the scapegoat archetype, because of the sins are put onto the Antichrist, as it were. And when he's gone, then that means then the new one doesn't have that, those blemishes, as it were. Although it does say that he'll kill him with the word. So, since the Messiah ben David character is the high priest, him killing the Antichrist is, basically like a sacrificial ritual kind of thing, if you really think about it. And if anybody out there is a fan of Skyrim, they might find a parallel with what was it? The High King got slain with the shout, the word.
What is Skyrim?
It's some popular video game.
Oh,
the opening scenes of the game, you're riding in a cart with this the true heir to the throne, which would basically represent this Ben David character. And so I guess the Ben Joseph character, he's licking the boots of the empire, as it were, right? And he takes the throne, and so this Ben Joseph guy gets slain by the word of the Ulfric, I think is his name in the game. So he would represent like the Ben David. So if that helps people to kind of understand this, that might put it into
if we have any gamers in the chat, go check out Christian Video Vault. I mean, it's a 3-hour-long video exposing the gaming industry, but I watched the first hour and I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't. It's just really bad. It's really, really, really bad. How much there's so much of this aspect. It's even more so than the movie industry, I would think.
I think
maybe
the horror
maybe not, but it sure seems like it.
Pretty dramatic. I don't even want to play anything like that.
Yeah. that's my little. So that anyway, go on.
Yeah, and if you actually do a little bit of research on like neural linguistic programming and things like that, I mean, it's hard to tell what they're really doing to you with these video games, with the flicker rate and things like that, you know.
Right.
So
Right. We were just talking about tonight with light bulbs and the what is my brain? I mean, my brain is not working right now after 3 hours. The what is it? The kind of light bulbs that they're bad for us because of their flicker rate. Oh my gosh, forget it.
well, even
Everybody knows what I'm talking about, but I can't think.
computer monitors and all that sort of thing are.
Yeah, but not the halogen, but what's the other
The
one?
mercury bulbs.
No. Oh, forget it. Anyway,
Well,
I can't think.
Uh,
Anyway, I've changed out all the bulbs in my house to be the soft light, the original soft light, because I don't want these new. Anyway,
I feel you, man.
go on. I'm
Gotta
just
take
making
care of
myself. I'm just
those.
starting to sound like my intelligence level is dropping, so I'm going to let you continue.
Jeepers, creepers. Gotta take care of those peepers.
You know, there was a weird movie about that song being in it, and it was a Donald Sutherland movie, and I'll never forget it. Somehow I happened upon it, and it was one of like the most traumatic movies I ever saw, where Donald Sutherland freaks out and like kills a child. But that song was part of that movie.
Here is this explanation, or rather an expansion, on this righteous priest figure. This is the fourth craftsman. It's a bit of a mystery character. And this is the Shem, which you might recognize as the son of Noah. According to the Evat of Rabbi Natan of Genesis 27, Adam was born uncircumcised because he was created in the image of God. While they were in Egypt, the children of Israel were not circumcised because they wished to follow the customs of the Egyptians. That should be very important here.
It was LEDs, by the way. LED
Oh,
bulbs.
yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, go on.
Do we seek to do the customs of, the nation we're in? Are we going to wear the mask or not, right? Kind of stuff like that. I know circumcision and wearing masks is a little bit different, but,
Well, it may not become that different.
ritualistic all the same. The Israelites lived in Egypt for 210 years, according to Midrash Rabbah. Satan denounced Israel when they were in Egypt because they were adopting the ways of Egypt, right? He's the accuser. Generally, this is interpreted as happening after Joseph died, and was because they stopped practicing circumcision. So again, he had ordered them to do this. They wouldn't keep the ways. However, the priestly tribe of Levi practiced circumcision in Egypt. So there's a pure priestly class. The Levites were the firstborn of each family, I believe. And it was a particular tribe, of course. Entry into the land of Israel required the circumcision of all the tribes. So, again, one of those commandments he gave. Noah, the second Adam, was also born circumcised. I did not know that. Noah, the second son of Adam, was also born circumcised. It's strange. Adam was born circumcised. I see. I thought it said not.
Adam was.
That's strange.
Oh.
Okay, so. Well, how about that? Okay, so anyway. Noah's son Shem, likewise, was born circumcised. Although Shem is unanimously declared by rabbis to have been the youngest son of Noah, he is always named first, being the most important of the three brothers. He is the ancestor of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the line that we're talking about with the Messiah ben David. So this is that character is contingent upon Shem, who we'll find is actually the high priest type character, Melchizedek. But he was also a priest, a prophet, and one of the 8 righteous mentioned twice in Genesis. They were all allotted a portion, both in this world and the world to come. Shem is styled as the Great One. According to Genesis 6, it was Shem who offered the sacrifices on the altar after Noah came out of the ark. Because Noah, having been crippled by a lion, didn't know that, was unfit for
Never
priestly
heard that
office.
before either.
Noah gave the priestly garments, which he had inherited from Adam, to Shem. Shem is extolled by the rabbis for his filial devotion in covering his father's nakedness. Although his brother Japheth helped in this act, Shem suggested and began it. His brother did not arrive on the scene until Shem was already on his way with the garment. Noah and the blessing the two sons said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, giving special significance because Shem would be the forefather of the Jewish people. So he was the begatter of Abraham and, his sons, Isaac and Jacob, but also he became the high priest, the first one to make an offering after the flood, which was the last cataclysm that would have occurred. So Melchizedek as Shem. Melchizedek occupied an important place in ancient Judaism, and one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, he is presented as a semi-divine being. Josephus referred to Melchizedek as the first priest and as a Canaanite chief, maybe like a man of renown kind of thing, like a Geborim type kind of thing. Weird to say that, but that's what I'm thinking of when I read that. Many scholars now believe that Israelite beliefs were an evolution of Canaanite beliefs. In Sumerian tradition, Melchizedek's city was near the temple on Mount Gerizim. Josephus followed the Jewish tradition and linked Salem with Jerusalem and Mount Zion, which Salem, Jerusalem means something of peace, right? Like to teach peace. So Salem would mean peace as well. The name Melchizedek translates to king of righteousness. He also had priestly duties based on the biblical lifespans of the Masoret text. Shem would have still been alive during Abraham's lifetime. That's strange to think that he had Abraham and then still was alive. The identification of Shem as Melchizedek is found in the Talmud. Many Christian sources have said Shem was associated with the Melchizedek for the anti-Christian reasons. He was probably already associated with priesthood, if not Melchizedek, in pre-rabbinic times. Targum. Sorry, I'm trying to discern what to leave out and what to read because sometimes it's...
I understand. Oh, I understand.
Some of these scholars all identify Shem as Melchizedek. The Book of Jubilees, which I listened to that. I personally like the Book of Jubilees. Also says that Shem was linked with priesthood. Similarly, Philo's writings exalt Shem. None of these documents contain anti-Christian polemics. It is not known when Shem became associated with Melchizedek. By the 4th century CE, the identification of Shem with Melchizedek was well established. This was not limited to Jewish sources. Ephraim, the Assyrian, also identifies Melchizedek as Shem. You know what's really weird is I had a dream several months ago. It was very brief, but something was handed to me, like this kind of thing right here. This, where we were talking about this earlier. I mean, it wasn't out of the sky so much, but like I remember looking down at my hands and another something or other, I don't know what it was, hands me this thing and says Shem to me. And for months now, I've been wondering what it meant. And I didn't even purposefully seek out this information. So it was really interesting to run across something like, to me, that seemed very profound like this.
Well, I want to bring that up as to why that relates to the dream thing we were talking about earlier, because this is how you know that your dream was not necessarily meant for you to go live and say, I had a dream, everybody, and I need to tell you about it.
Yeah, like there's the difference.
Dana Coverstone.
Right there. Yeah.
Like Dana Coverstone, and I've told you about some dreams that I've had. I told you about one dream in particular, and I had another one not long after that was a bit scary. It was a sudden lockdown. It was with friends that we were going to get pizza, and they said, oh, you know how usually the lockdowns are like, okay, we'll start at Friday at 8 p.m. Instead of being like, oh, this is immediate danger, we got to start right now. They set like a day, 3 days ahead. They're like, okay, on Monday we're going to lock down. And so in my dream, and the lockdown was like, right now, get your pizza, you got to get out of here. They're locking down the whole country. It was very sudden, and it was a scary dream, and a lot of other stuff
Better
happened.
get a
It
little
kind of
Caesar's pizza then.
fades from my mind now. But the point is those dreams are not prophetic to share. And we're bringing this up because I think we talked about it earlier. Sorry to those who weren't here earlier.
Well, that
But
was
these
before we
dreams
even
are for
went live,
us.
I think.
I think we talked about it live a little bit too. Maybe we didn't. Point is I talked about it with Ben's last night. Those dreams might be just for us. Might be for us to, like you said, you had this dream, it didn't make any sense, and now it's making sense with your research. That is the same for my very vivid dreams, and especially if they stick with me for a long time, if they kind of fade, I don't worry about it. But, just because you're having vivid dreams doesn't mean they're prophetic, doesn't mean they're for everybody.
Oh, I kind of get it now. Like when you were telling me about this guy earlier, we don't have to mention his name, but when you were telling me about that earlier, now I kind of understand. You're not supposed to interpret your own dream. That's one thing. That's one point to make, I think. But then that might be why he had another person trying to interpret it or something like that. But anyway, be that as it may, my reasoning is that it has to be a fruit of the Spirit. So in other words, had we not talked about this stuff right here, we wouldn't be sharing a fruit, right? So where there's two or more gathered, there he is. So if you're standing on your own soapbox, exalting yourself, well, there's no spirit there. But if we're just sharing some information, well, there you go. You get some fruit between. That's where your iron sharpens iron. You get your sparks. So that's how I see it. Is a lot of times, reading something, you get blessings and benefits from that. But I think it's when you actually speak it, something special about speaking about God and talking about God. I think that causes some fruits to manifest.
Totally.
Almost like you're pollinating trees. So that's why it's so, we got to be so careful what we're sharing, because we're still pollinating, whether we mean good or bad, so it's one thing to remember. So, every time I read this stuff, sometimes that's why I don't like to share things I haven't read already. But in this case, this was something that, again, was very relevant, because when I did have the dream about Shem, for instance, well, I didn't know what that meant, so I started reading about it. And Shem means the name. And so it's used as a substitution for a name of God. So just like when we're reading the Bible and it says Lord, well, for the Jews, they would say Shem. Hashem. So I didn't know that. So that's why I started researching names of God, because I wanted to draw closer to God and be like, well, why don't they use the name of God? So they reserve that for certain feast days, right? Well, okay, well, that's interesting. So, and then what do you know? Here's Shem as a high priest. So that's pretty cool,
That's right.
But wow, I love when that stuff happens. And so that's the point of when it gets shared, it becomes like a testimony, and a fruit of the Spirit, Let me see if I got anything else here to share with you real quick.
Just be careful not to call it a prophetic dream or that sort of thing unless you're absolutely certain.
Well, I don't know for sure. I'll let you know.
Well, not you. I mean, the general person. I think the general person should be careful not to say, this is a prophetic dream. I know these things are going to happen. The Lord told me that, unless you're absolutely sure. Because if you need someone else to decipher your dreams, especially somebody who makes money at doing that, that's not they're there to like boost their business, not like, oh yeah, I do deciphering of dreams, but oh, by the way, I charge $15 an hour or whatever. I mean,
yes, exactly.
So
healers and stuff usually won't accept payment, and that's how you kind of know the difference. But I didn't want to give any kind of glory to this bunch of folks, but I did kind of stumble onto this because I was studying the term Babylon, and this is actually the Thelema website.
this is the gang that is largely devoted to Crowley's teachings. So they kind of do help illuminate some things because, again, they use a lot of the symbolism that we see. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to read that because this word right here, Bab, means gate. And since we're in this time, let me see where I had that. I had a graphic there. I was reading about what the days meant. Maybe it's here. Sorry, guys. I just wanted to make this relevant comparison here. Oh, come on.
We're okay.
Go a little slower and I'll find it eventually. There it is. All right. Remember here we're talking about Rosh Hashanah means the opening of the gates, right?
Right.
And the gates are open, means you can come into heaven, right? And it says, tells us what about Babylon? Come out of her, my people. And so what are these people supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be coming out of the cities, come out of Babylon, go make your temporary shelters, be under the, night sky. Remind yourself that, Yahweh is your Elohim. Is that how you say it?
Elohim.
I never really said it out loud.
I think it's Elohim.
Remind yourself that he's providing for you, and that's the thing. I think that's why he wants you to do these things, because he wants you to be reminded of the bounty and the beauty and these stories and such. But anyway, this term gate, we do find that Babylon, if you look this up, it can mean door or gate in Arabic. And I have the link for that, but I'm not sure what I did with it. So if somebody wants to look that up, they just can Google it. But if you type in, I think it's just Bab and Arabic. I think is Bab, Arabic, and gate. I think is what I did. And then here it is. There's a Wikipedia page. Yeah, I found it. Let me see if I can send this to myself real quick, and I can give it to you guys. Yep, that's it. Here you go. Oh, sorry. I'm not using the app. I'm using the website. All right. Okay, so you guys got that now, and so you can see what I'm reading. So I'm going to read that a little bit here just to make it relevant. So the reason that I wanted to read that is because we see here that Bab is referring to a person there initially, but if you keep going down, it talks about how the Bab was a title, was a merchant from Shiraz, and who died in 1844 at the age of 24, claimed to be a messenger of God. He took the title of Bab, meaning gate or door. What does it say about Jesus? He is at the door, right? A reference associated with the compromised 12er Mahdi. He faced opposition from the Persian government and eventually executed him, and thousands of his followers were known as Babis. The Bab composed numerous letters and books in which he stated his claims and defined his teachings with some of the roots in Sheikhism, maybe Sheikhism. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. And therefore, Hurufism, using many numerical calculations. He introduced the idea
of he whom God shall make manifest, a messianic figure who will bring a greater message than his own. The Baha'is, the Bab fills a similar role as Elijah or John the Baptist, a predecessor or forerunner of who paved the way for their own religion. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, was a follower of the Bab and claimed in 1863 to be the fulfillment of Bab's prophecy 13 years after the former's death. Didn't want to go on ever long about that guy, but I did want to mention that because with that meaning door or gate, it kind of ties into also the prophecy of the East Gate, known as the Mercy Gate, in Jerusalem. And actually, should probably show that real quick, because it's very relevant, and this will probably be like maybe the last thing I had to show.
Okay.
Okay, so when Christ is supposed to return, now, do you remember why the red heifer is so important?
Because they'll be able to have their sacrifices again.
Do you remember what it does for them? Like what they say?
Remind me.
They say it'll
Remind
make
me.
them clean, right? Because
Okay.
there's been so much death that all of Israel is essentially a cemetery at this point, right? So everywhere is unclean. So that's why they need the red heifer, okay? So to add to that, because of the unclean thing, right? So this is a gate that they sealed up after Jesus went through it and back. I think it's Ezekiel. It talks about this fulfillment here. So he goes through the gate on the donkey. I think it was when he went through this gate here, and when he went through it in the sun. So the prophecy was that he would return through it. So when the Muslims had this city, I think it might have been Saladin, maybe not. That's probably not him, but it might even say that who it was in here. But anyway, it's the Gate of Mercy, the Golden Gate, and they sealed it up so that he could not return through it. And then they put a Muslim cemetery in front of the gate.
This is hilarious. Like, he couldn't get through that.
So
Like, Jesus couldn't. It's sealed.
But,
Sorry.
But do you
Jesus.
understand what they were doing, though? So, like, yeah, sure, the rock's sealed and everything, but then put a cemetery in front of it, saying that he can't walk here without becoming unclean before he enters the temple. Well,
According to their law.
exactly. But the thing is, the temple they're trying to build isn't even necessary, you know, or anything, because like the true temple are the believers, those with the Holy Spirit in.
Right.
So
Of course.
yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, sorry, I didn't want to go ever long, but let me share this with the people because this is part of the Day of Atonement and stuff like that. In other words, when Jesus returns, it's supposed to be through the Mount of Olives and then here. Like after he descends, he's supposed to walk through the gate. So this is something that we should be watching for. The city of David was found not in Islamic land. Yeah, it's supposed to be like a football stadium away from the Temple Mount, as it's called. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't been looking at the chat. You remind me of the babe. The babe with the power.
Yeah. Labyrinth.
The,
And now the song is in my head.
you remind me of the calf. The red calf with the power. But yeah, that's the whole point of the red calf and stuff, is because of this unclean nature thing. And so that's their ploy right there, was to keep this as unclean ground. Because that's what the Sadducees and Pharisees were always doing, right? They were always trying to box Jesus in with all these ridiculous rules and stuff. So then they'd say like, oh, you can't return and step on You know what I mean? But anyway, one really interesting little trivia thing here is that there was a guy hiking around here. I was watching a video where it was talking about some dude was hiking around here and fell through a tomb into a mass grave that actually had another gate underneath. And so it was suspected that indeed he had found the true Golden Gate below this. So like a few feet off to the side and under is where the actual gate resides, and that this is really not it. But then right behind this is, this is where the Temple Mount, as it were, basically resides. So anyway, I just thought that would be a really good way to finish things there, is to talk about that. Because then Bob Alon, he's at the door, well, this is the door right here, guys.
Right.
The mercy seat, mercy gate, gates are open, Rosh Hashanah. Like, that's why everybody wants to pay so much attention to the Feast of Trumpets, because they think that the last trumpet blast is when this wall's probably going to come down, just like in Jericho. Oh, meow. See? Oh, I hope that's what happens.
Oh, meow.
Well, if you didn't talk
meow.
about it, it wouldn't occur to you. See, there's an
I know.
example of
I know
fruit.
this.
A little grape,
I
if you
totally
will.
agree. Yep.
So anyway, I appreciate you folks, especially anybody that stuck it out and listened to this. If you have anything to add, if you do a little bit of extra digging or research, please share it in the Discord, and that way we can enrich it further and produce some more fruit. But really appreciate you guys, man. Oh, and
Yes,
and happy,
and we appreciate you.
happy Day of Atonement, happy
Yes.
Trumpets, happy Feast of Tabernacles. Thank you for learning about these things with me. Oh, and I got a
That's what we do,
pomegranate
we
and an
learn
apple
together.
in the fridge. So those are some other traditional things aside from honey. I think I've mentioned that before, but just a reminder, if you want to get into the spirit itself, you can get those particular fruits. It's said that the pomegranate has one seed for every commandment, so it's eaten in memory of that.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Yeah, did you tell us that last time?
I think I did mention it, but I wanted
You
to
may
eat
have.
it because it's relevant.
Do you want to pray? Or do you want me to?
I can't hardly talk right now. I think I'm losing my voice.
Okay.
It's been
Okay, I will
a little
pray.
while. Sorry for talking so
Yeah.
much. Go
Well,
ahead.
maybe losing your voice is an indication that it's time to be done.
Wait, yeah, it's timely.
Oh, I don't know what James is saying, but he's got a pen and a pineapple. Oh, it was a pen pineapple song or whatever.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Just maybe draw on
Pen
apple
pineapple,
paper.
apple pin.
Oh,
I don't know.
pineapple. I see. Yeah, because the apple, it's a little bit related. Pineal gland apple. Please continue.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's pray. Let's bow our heads. Oh, real quick praise. I wanted to tell you guys that when I ask you guys to reach out if you need prayer, please do that. I had somebody reach out. Unfortunately, it was 2 days ago, and I just saw it today. But what a blessing to be able to talk to that person and to pray together. It's a pretty awesome thing. So don't be afraid to reach out for prayer. You can email me at ladyliberty@countermail.com. I will send you my phone number and I will call you, or if you're not comfortable with that, I will just offer my prayers and I will pray. I always do it in the moment it happens. So anyway, praise for that person. I hope it was helpful. So Lord Jesus, let us come closer to you with this information. I pray that this information gives us a stronger relationship, a better relationship. We seek to give you glory. We seek to be messengers of your word. And I hope and pray that that's what we've done. And if there's anyone that is unsure about who you are, that we have shown your light, Lord, and made less of us and more of you in this discussion tonight. Our hope is to bring us closer to you, but also others, and to protect the remnant as it stands, and to persevere in these difficult times, as there will be a wearing of the saints, and we will be overcome in some way that we're not aware of yet, and not to look forward with fear, but with rejoicing, knowing that whatever we succumb to, that if we stand strong, no matter what, that we will be eternally with you, Lord Jesus. Let us not forget that. Let us remember always that this is just a very short span of time that we actually can work hard, and not work hard because we need works, but because we can work hard in our worship and praise of you. It's actually not work. It brings us more peace. And so what I mean to say is, let us work to fulfill your purpose, but knowing that our works are not what gives us that role in heaven that you will give us, that it comes with our faith. So let us trust you and surrender our will, less of us and more of you. And we pray to repent from the things we need to repent from, Lord Jesus, and to turn towards you more and more each day. We praise your holy and mighty name, the Lord Yeshua, HaMashiach of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen. Hey, one thing I want to share, less of us, more of him, made me think of the bread and the leaven. We don't want any leaven, right? And again, with the fruits and the harvest and the grains get ground, they get turned into bread. So think of all the patience of the saints that have come before us. They become the body of Christ, the bread, the martyrs, the wine, just like Jesus. It's beautiful. It just came to me, so I wanted to share it.
I like that. I love it. And, somebody asked me, how do you do this stuff? Like I'm entertaining people, but I'm not entertaining anyone. I'm trying to be a conduit for the Lord. Not really trying to be here. I don't think you are either. I don't think we're trying to be here to entertain. I'm trying to spread the good news of the Lord Jesus Christ first and foremost. And so this might be entertaining, but it's a good work of the Lord. It's something we're called to do, I truly believe.
Oh, I don't see it as entertainment. I mean, the whole purpose was to do these on the Friday nights so that we could get in line with the Sabbaths. And then, in the process of doing that, teaching, doing fellowship, reserving time, now we're doing this, which teaches us, well, there's other times to be thoughtful of and remembrance. That was the whole purpose of the Last Supper, So.
Oh,
Dude.
James just rickrolled me. James just Rick Astley rolled me. Rick rolled me. I'm not
was he
happy
trolling
with you,
you
James.
or something?
No, he just typed out the words from Rick Astley's song, I'm Never Gonna Give You Up, Never Gonna Let You Down.
Oh.
And now the song will be in our heads forevermore.
Never gonna give you up.
Yeah.
Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and hurt you.
There's the entertainment for the night. Oh my
Never
gosh,
gonna give,
James.
Never give you up.
Stop. You know this song way too well.
We've known each other for so long. Hey guys, don't even tempt me, man.
Okay, we better go before you keep singing. So anyway, thanks for being here. Bless you, and no more Rick Astley ever again.
Well, that's how I rotate on an axis or Rickroll.
Okay.
Farewell, meow meow.
Don't Rickroll me. Okay, have a good night. Peace and love of the Lord.
Now, to my understanding, I believe that solar flares
It's quite possible that the poles will shift.
Earth's chakras are open. Return of the Anunnaki. The best party in 2012.
tidal waves or a volcano, a volcanic eruption. Some refer to this as the New Age.
Words will come. They're gonna see this. They're gonna show us the way.
Time approaches, we're drawing near. December 21st of 2012's been declared, assigned as the date to prepare for the great global shift. A mental shift, the great awakening, dimensional quickening. The end of duality depends on who you're asking. A brand new mentality, it's a whole cultures embrace Mayan prophecy just so they can profit off their new age philosophies. Let's look logically into this mythology and where it all started, debunking the dishonesty. This serpent worshipping community was confused and tricked demonically. The Mayans studied the stars and the moon and skies methodically. Lives revolved around astrology, and chronologically they were taught by fallen angels, teaching them black magic theology. Through countless genealogies, they noted all anomalies, following planetary oddities, secretly plotting to act like they have the power to control eclipses, timing it to the exact moment they pull beneath hearts out of living sacrificial victims. Inducing mass hallucinations, hypnotic mind manipulations, sinister assemblies of shamans, high on psychoactive psychedelics, meddling peddlers akin to snake oil salesmen, peddling murderous ceremonial acts while wearing flamboyant masks and talismans, concocting potions that cause trances, acting out symbolic repetitive chants and blasphemous wicked dances. Practices passed down by inbred malevolent hypnotists, blood-drinking bone-nosed benefactors with their trusted inheritors to ritualistically control the masses, continuing to this day misleading so many on their quest for answers. Played out on the stages of the ancient blood-drenched rainforest, investigating hieroglyphs and presenting themselves as self-appointed specialists. There's more to this than money, there's a spiritual connection, a pattern that goes deeper. It's the spirit of deception. It seems in every culture serpent beings are mentioned. Could it all just be coincidence or worthy of inspection? Still misleading to this day with diabolical intentions, inventing ways to change through time, going numerous directions, morphing the Ku Klux Klan, Quetzalcoatl serpents into aliens, following the trail of the ancient snake's evil scheme back to Eden. Nothing is new under the sun, and the system has been repeated. Passing the king's office, ancient astronauts seated in rocket ships carved in rock in the lid of a sarcophagus. So many misinterpretations and imitations, pinning every evil act on the Bible and Christians, so they can remove the so-called duality and activate the next phase of Aquarius mentality. Purposely fooling large multitudes and groups into being apathetic and accepting their plan without challenging the validity.